Chapter 1486. Gue Yin Tian had used ghost concealment, and after that sword strike, Shao Chen knew that it was impossible for him to keep Gue Yin Tian here. Although he could defeat Gue Yin Tian, it would be difficult to kill him. After all, Gue Yin Tian was no ordinary character. Although he couldn't do it this time, he might be able next time. Of course, Shao Chen didn't know that ghost concealment came at a great cost to Gue Yin Tian. If Gue Yin Tian encountered Shao Chen again in the future, he wouldn't be able to use ghost concealment again. Shao Chen let Gue Yin Tian leave. Shao Chen did not care about his threat at all. It was just as Shao Chen had said earlier. If Gue Yin Tian was no match for him today, what could he change in the future? One had to know that Shao Chen had been able to catch up and even surpass Gue Yin Tian. In the future, the gap between the two would only widen. The dense ghost qi slowly dissipated, along with Gue Yin Tian's figure. Gue Yin Tian had escaped. After a fierce battle with Shao Chen, he had escaped with serious injuries. Facing such an outcome, the human race side was naturally overjoyed, but the ghost race side's expression changed drastically. Previously, no one in the human race could stop Gue Yin Tian, so he was like a tiger in a flock of sheep, slaughtering tens of thousands of human race cultivators by himself. Now that Gue Yin Tian had escaped, who in the ghost race side could stop Shao Chen? Could they rely on Gue Hao? Obviously not. Even Gue Yin Tian couldn't, let alone Gue Hao. Unknowingly, the situation had been completely reversed. After Gue Yin Tian, Shao Chen had become a nightmare of many ghost race cultivators. Sure enough, just as these ghost race cultivators' expressions changed, Shao Chen's indifferent gaze swept over them. When Shao Chen's gaze swept over them, these ghost race cultivators felt a chill run down their spines. At the same time, the supreme elder of the Ghost King Palace, the great sovereign of the Ghost Clan, who was trapped in the Sky Lock Grand Formation, bellowed furiously. Shao Chen, if you dare to kill a member of the Ghost Clan, I will never let you off. This ghost race great sovereign was indeed in a miserable state. Trapped in the Sky Lock Grand Formation, he had no way to escape for a while. He had great strength, but there was no way to use it. Moreover, he had seen the whole process of Shao Chen defeating Gue Yin Tian. To be honest, this Ghost Supreme was also very confident in Shao Chen's combat strength. Shao Chen's combat strength was almost on par with Long Yang and the other two. With such strength, even Gue Yin Tian fled. If Shao Chen attacked the ghost race martial artist at this time, it would absolutely be a disaster. However, in the face of this ghost race great sovereign's threat, Shao Chen only glanced at him indifferently and sneered. You're already a clay bodhisattva crossing the river, yet you still have the mood to threaten others. Although Shao Chen did not know what had happened, it was not difficult for him to see that this ghost race great sovereign was trapped at this time and could not attack at all. Since he was already a trapped person, what could he do even if he had the cultivation of great sage realm? Therefore, in the face of this ghost race great sovereign's threat, Shao Chen did not take it seriously at all. As soon as he finished speaking, Shao Chen took a step forward and disappeared on the spot. In the next moment, he appeared in front of the ghost race martial artists. Killing intent flashed in his eyes as he slashed out with the dustless sword in his hand. These ghost race martial artists were only at the Tao Emperor stage. Such a cultivation base was completely insufficient before Shao Chen. With a single slash of his sword, he instantly killed over 20 of them. The surrounding ghost race martial artists were terrified when they saw that over 20 people had been killed with a single slash of his sword. However, this was only the beginning. Without stopping, Shao Chen directly charged into the ghost race martial artist camp. There is no need to be soft-hearted when dealing with the ghost race, because if you did not kill them, they would kill you. If you did not kill these ghost race martial artists, even more people from the human race would be killed. For a time, shrill cries rose and fell. Just like when a human race faced Gue Yin Tian earlier, the ghost race felt despair when facing Shao Chen. It was even worse than Gue Yin Tian. There was no doubt that Shao Chen's strength was above Gue Yin Tian's. However, apart from strength, Shao Chen's killing intent was even denser than Gue Yin Tian's. Moreover, Xiao Qin's speed of killing was also above Gue Yintian's. When Gue Yintian slaughtered the human race martial artists earlier, he could not help but show off a little. However, Xiao Qin was not so bored at all. He only killed. It was purely killing. In front of Xiao Qin, the noble martial artists were not living beings, but a pile of weeds waiting to be harvested. Less than 100 breaths of time had passed since Xiao Qin made his move, and more than 200 ghost race martial artists had been killed. Faced with such a scene, the human race was excited, the dragon race was shocked, and the ghost race was terrified. The dragon race martial artists who had been clamoring that the human race was incompetent all shut their mouths. At the same time, their hearts were filled with shock. Xiao Qin, the first holy son of the human race, was actually this strong. In the eyes of these dragon race martial artists, Xiao Qin's strength was indeed comparable to Long Yang's. Inconceivable, simply inconceivable. The dragon race was incomparably shocked. However, someone from the ghost race shouted at this moment, "Stop him! Stop him!" Hearing these angry shouts, the ghost race martial artists had no choice but to swarm forward and use their lives to stop Xiao Qin. It was a very familiar scene. Not long ago, the human race had also used human lives to stop Gue Yintian. But now, the ghost race had fallen into such a situation in the blink of an eye. Human lives? They could only use human lives to stop Xiao Qin. However, these ghost race martial artists could be killed with a single sword strike from Xiao Qin. As time passed, the number of martial artists of the ghost clan that Xiao Qin had on his hands increased. It was as if he was cutting vegetables. Ghost race martial artists' corpses fell from the sky one after another. However, no one dared to retreat because no one in the ghost race could stop Xiao Qin. If they left Xiao Qin alone, even more ghost race martial artists would die. There was no superfluous words. Unlike Gue Yintian, who showed off from time to time, Little Chung did not say a single word when facing the ghost race cultivators. Only the dustless sword in his hand continued to slash out. The sky was filled with crazy sword edges, and the ghost race martial artists fell one after another. There was no pause in the slaughter. At this moment, Xiao Qin was like the incarnation of a god of death. His slaughter made the ghost race martial artists tremble in fear. He had become a nightmare in the hearts of many ghost race martial artists present. After this battle, the ghost race martial artists who were lucky enough to escape this calamity would probably involuntarily think of today when the name Xiao Qin was mentioned in the future. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1487. Xiao Shang's massacre terrified many ghost race martialists, and the massacre clearly did not stop. The experts of the two races were in a fierce battle at this time, so naturally, no one could stop Xiao Qin. The corpses of the ghost race martialists fell from the sky one after another. Just as Xiao Qin signaled for the massacre of the ghost race martialists, there seemed to be a faintly discernible cry in the sky. Then, blood-colored rain fell from the sky. Rain of blood fell from the sky, which meant that at least a saint had fallen. However, the martialists of the two races did not care about this. It was very normal for a saint to fall in a battle of such a scale. Not to mention a saint, even a quasi-saint great venerate might fall. As the rain of blood fell, a spatial crack appeared in the sky. Then, the corpse of a human race saint fell from the void. It was a human race saint who had fallen. However, in just a few breaths of time, another spatial crack appeared. This time, it was a ghost race saint who had fallen. The rain of blood in the sky became heavier and heavier, and the corpses of saints kept falling from the void. As these saints continued to fall, there were finally quasi-saint great sovereigns who had fallen. The first quasi-saint great venerate to fall was an elder of a quasi-saint great clan of the human race. He only had the cultivation of a quasi-saint great clan. Even so, he was a genuine quasi-saint great venerate. Normally, he would definitely be an overlord. However, at this moment, he had fallen in such a meat grinder-like battlefield. Following the fall of the quasi-saint great venerate, the rain of blood in the sky became heavier, just like a rainstorm on a normal day. The cries from the sky also became louder and louder. The rain of blood filled the sky. But even so, the battle still had no intention of stopping. Neither the ghost race nor the human race retreated. The human race had no way out and could not retreat. Because once they retreated, the ghost race would be able to drive straight into the human race's territory and kill their way into it. As for the ghost race, in their opinion, perhaps it was the pride in their hearts that prevented them from lowering their heads to the human race. After all, since ancient times, the ghost clan had always felt that they were stronger than the human clan. The human clan had always lived under the pressure of the ghost clan. There were even a few times in history where the human clan had almost been annihilated by the ghost clan. They had never been at a disadvantage in a battle with the human race. So this time, the ghost race believed that victory would definitely belong to them. However, the situation this time seemed to be a little different. Firstly, the human race had the help of the dragon race. Although the dragon race did not give their full support, the arrival of Long Cunyon had indeed made up for the gap in strength between the human race and the ghost race. The interference of the dragon clan was something that the ghost clan did not expect. This was the first reason. As for the second reason, it was Shao Chun. After defeating Gui Yintian and forcing him to flee with heavy injuries, who else in the ghost race would be able to stop Shao Chun? At this moment, Shao Chun was like the Grim Reaper, constantly reaping the lives of the ghost race cultivators. The ghost race could not do anything about it. The battle continued. Previously, Gui Yintian had killed the human race cultivators. Now, Shao Chun had similarly killed more than 10,000 ghost race cultivators. At the same time, this number was still increasing. Seeing Shao Chun reaping the lives of the ghost race cultivators with a single Jianyi sword, the ghost race cultivator trapped in the Sky Lock Grand Formation shouted loudly. At this moment, his face was extremely gloomy. If this continued, who knew how many ghost race cultivators Shao Chun could kill in the end? No one could stop Shao Chun. Moreover, the battle in the void was becoming more and more intense. Saints, quasi-saints, and great venerables were constantly falling. Moreover, the frequency was still increasing. Blood rain fell from the sky as if it wanted to dye this space red. The rain that fell on the ground had almost formed a blood-red river. The trees and the land were already dyed red by the blood rain. Who would have thought that the battle would actually develop into this situation? More than once, he thought of ordering a retreat. However, the ghost race great saint trapped in the Sky Lock Grand Formation was unwilling to give up. Looking at the human race, he was unwilling to retreat like this. Moreover, if he retreated, it would be even more impossible to defeat the human race. On one hand, he wanted to fight to the death with the human race. On the other hand, he was in a dilemma as he watched the ghost race cultivators fall one after another. It was not that he did not dare to fight to the death with the human race. It was because during the 100 Race War, both the ghost race and the human race had to face more than just each other. They were not the only two races in the Central World. There were other races eyeing them covetously from the side. Once they fought with the human race here and suffered heavy casualties, their foundation would be damaged. What would the ghost race use to resist the other races? While he was in a dilemma, the number of ghost race cultivators who died at Shao Chen's hands had already reached 20,000. He'd slaughtered over 20,000 members of the ghost race by himself. Moreover, all of them were elites of the ghost race. Just like the human race, the weakest amongst the participating cultivators of the ghost race was at the Dao King realm. Shao Chen alone had killed 20,000 of these elite cultivators. What kind of concept was this? Seeing that Shao Chun was still killing wantonly, the great saint of the ghost clan, who was trapped in the sky ceiling grand formation, could not help but shout, "Retreat!" In the end, he still gave the order to retreat. There was no other way. Shao Chun alone had already suppressed many ghost race cultivators to the point of suffocation. If they did not deal with Shao Chun, the ghost race would definitely lose this battle. No one could stop Shao Chun. Even Gui Yintian was no match for Shao Chun. Following the ghost race great saint's shout, the ghost race cultivators chose to retreat without any hesitation. However, Because he was trapped in the sky lock grand formation, the ghost race great saint could not retreat, even though he gave the order. Of course, outsiders could not enter the sky lock grand formation either. Seeing the ghost race cultivators quickly retreat, the ghost race great saint's expression was extremely gloomy. However, he did not say anything. Given the current situation, retreat was the best choice. While the battle in the outside world ended and the ghost tribe retreated, Yin Yangzi, Gui Fun, and the others who were fighting in the void also sensed the changes in the outside world. In fact, they already knew what had happened when Xiao Chen appeared. Xiao Chen had directly defeated Gui Yintian. This had already caused Gui Mu's expression to turn gloomy. On the contrary, Yin Yangzi was very happy. Xiao Chen had successfully broken through to the Sage Realm great perfection and defeated the Ghost Race's first holy son, Gui Yintian. How could Yin Yangzi not be happy? Gui Mu had previously said that no one in the human race could stop Gui Yintian. Now, Yin Yangzi had returned the same words to him. Who in the Ghost Race could stop Xiao Chen? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1488. The Ghost Clan cultivators outside had already retreated. In the air, Gui Mu, who was fighting fiercely with Yin Yangzi, had an ugly expression on his face, but he still maintained his rationality. After blocking Yin Yangzi's attack, Gui Mu took the initiative to retreat. Seeing this, Yin Yangzi did not stop him. At the Great Sage's level, it was very difficult to kill him. If the saints on the saint rankings were difficult to kill because they relied on various life-saving methods, then the Great Sage's life force was extremely vigorous. He did not need any trump cards. The Great Sage could stand there and be killed easily. Therefore, since Gui Mu chose to retreat, Yin Yangzi did not continue to pursue him. The outcome of the battle in the outside world had already been decided. At the same time, hundreds of spatial cracks appeared in the sky, after which black-robed experts from the Ghost Clan flew out from the spatial black holes one after another. Soon after, they withdrew from the battlefield. The Ghost Clan cultivators also retreated. Then, Yin Yangzi and the other human clan cultivators appeared. This was the human clan's Great Sage battle. Successfully repelling the Ghost Clan's attack was inseparable from the Dragon Clan support. Of course, it was also inseparable from Xiao Chen. If Xiao Chen had not defeated Gui Yintian and severely damaged the Ghost Clan's morale, and if Xiao Chen had not single-handedly slaughtered more than 20,000 Ghost Clan cultivators, the Ghost Clan would not have retreated so easily. All the Ghost Clan cultivators had fled, leaving only the Ghost Clan Great Sage trapped in the Sky Lock Grand Formation. It was not that he did not want to leave, but he could not leave at all. Trapped in the Sky Lock Grand Formation, the Ghost Clan Great Sage had no way to break free. Arriving at the Sky Lock Grand Formation, Yin Yangzi looked at the Ghost Clan Great Sage and said softly, "Lock him in the Sky Lock Grand Formation for now." Continuing to lock him in the Sky Lock Grand Formation was the safest method. Otherwise, releasing him would cause unnecessary trouble. Hearing Yin Yangzi's words, Xing Zhantian and Xianyuan Wudi did not object. As for Xianyuan Wudi, he unconsciously looked at Xiao Chen with a complicated expression. Xianyuan Wudi had seen Xiao Chen's battle prowess. However, he hadn't expected that Xiao Chen would have broken through to the sage accomplished realm. Moreover, he had defeated Gui Yintian. He was already ranked 4th on the saint rankings. At this moment, the blood rain in the sky gradually stopped, and the light screen of the saint rankings appeared. The golden light scattered across the land like a rainbow after the rain. On the light screen of the saint rankings, Xiao Chen's ranking had risen from 10th place to 4th place, just behind Longyang, Tian Mushi, and the Divine Lord. Naturally, many people noticed the changes on the saint rankings. When they saw that it was Xiao Chen again, and that Xiao Chen had risen to 4th place this time, everyone was shocked. Throughout the Central World, cultivators from various races were shocked by the changes on the saint rankings. At the same time, in the Beast race, Celestial race, and Divine race, Longyang and the other two were also looking at the changes on the saint rankings with different thoughts. Longyang sat alone in the garden board. He looked at the light screen of the saint rankings in the sky with a faint smile. He really caught up. Interesting. In Tian Mushi's dwelling in the celestial race, Tian Mushi, who had been cultivating with her eyes closed, also looked at the light screen of the saint rankings in the sky with a smile on her face. Defeated Gue Yintian? Xiao Chun, you really haven't disappointed me. Longyang and Tian Mushi had interacted with Xiao Chun in the past, but the Divine Lord didn't know much about Xiao Chun. Currently, in the Divine Race, the Divine Lord was also looking at the light screen of the saint rankings in the sky. A glint of light flashed through his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking, but a smile gradually appeared on his face. After defeating Gue Yintian, Xiao Chun had finally entered the first echelon of the saint rankings. His cultivation had completely caught up to Longyang and the other two. Although he didn't dare say that he could defeat the three of them, at the very least, Xiao Chun now had the ability to contend with the three of them. Of course, in the eyes of the world, Xiao Chun still couldn't be compared to Longyang and the other two. After all, Xiao Chun had only defeated Gue Yintian, and the former Gue Yintian couldn't be compared to Longyang and the other two at all. However, it wouldn't be long before this kind of thinking would change, because during the 100 Race War, Xiao Chun had plenty of opportunities to fight the three of them. After the battle ended, the great saint of the Ghost Clan was still trapped in the Skylock Formation. Next, many human race cultivators began to clean up the battlefield and treat the wounded. Xiao Chun also followed Yin Yangzi and the others back to the human race's encampment. Although the human race had won the battle, they had also paid a heavy price. Not to mention those who died in the battle. Even Yin Yangzi and the other two were injured. Of course, what worried Xiao Chun the most was Xiao Sheng and the others. Although Qin Shiru and the other two women were also injured, their injuries weren't serious. However, Xiao Sheng, Randang, Mengjia, and Binglian's injuries were worse. In the battle with the Ghost Clan's quasi-sage Great Venerables, Xiao Sheng and the other three had fought with their lives on the line. At the last moment, the Ghost Clan chose to retreat. Otherwise, if the battle had continued, Xiao Sheng and the other three would have been in danger of dying. In this battle, a total of 39 quasi-saint and Great Venerables from both sides had died. Among them, the number of Great Saint and Emperor Venerables of the human race was higher, and more than 100 saints had died. As for the cultivators below them, the number of casualties was innumerable. Moreover, in addition to those who had died, there were even more people who were injured, and they were all seriously injured. Without a few months of recuperation, it was impossible for them to fully recover. It could be said that the two races had really gone all out in this battle, and the price they had paid was absolutely enormous. First, after settling down Qin Shiru and the other two women, Xiao Chun went directly to the residence of Xiao Sheng and the other three. The injuries of the four were not light, but when Xiao Chun arrived, Xiao Sheng had already been treated and was lying on the bed, resting. His face was pale, and his aura was extremely weak. Seeing Xiao Chun, Xiao Sheng smiled slightly and said, "Boy, not bad. Your cultivation is almost catching up with mine." Xiao Sheng's cultivation was at the great completion of the quasi-sage realm, and Xiao Qin's cultivation was at the sage perfection realm. Indeed, Xiao Qin's cultivation was almost catching up with Xiao Sheng's. Hearing this, Xiao Chun smiled slightly and didn't dwell on this issue. Instead, he asked with concern, "Old ancestor, how are you? Are you okay?" "I won't die, but I have to rest for a while." Xiao Sheng smiled slightly. His life wasn't in danger, but his injuries were quite serious, and he needed a rest. Recently, Xiao Sheng couldn't fight anymore. Hearing that his life wasn't in danger, Xiao Qin secretly breathed a sigh of relief. As long as his life wasn't in danger, it was fine. As for rest, there was no other way. Moreover, after this battle, Xiao Qin also felt that the ghost race wouldn't continue to fight to the death, unless the ghost race had lost their minds and wanted to perish together with the human race. Please add it to your collection. Monthly vote recommended. Chapter 1489. The human clan had paid a heavy price in this battle, but the ghost clan had paid an even greater price. They had suffered more casualties than the human clan. Perhaps the casualties of the two clans were about the same for those above the Saint Realm. However, the casualties of the Ghost Clan cultivators below the Saint Realm were far greater than that of the human clan. And the cause of all this was naturally Shao Chun. Based on the current situation, it was already very difficult for the Ghost Clan to defeat the human clan. It could even be said that it was completely impossible. The great sage of the Ghost Clan had fallen into the hands of the human clan. If the Ghost Clan continued to fight, Yangzi and the others would definitely kill the great sage without hesitation. Although the great sage was difficult to kill, it did not mean that it was impossible to kill him. At this time, the great sage of the Ghost Clan was trapped in the Skylock Formation. His life and death were in the hands of Yangzi and the others. With for the great sage attacking at the same time, how could they not kill the great sage of the Ghost Clan? They had hostages and captives, and they were not simple captives. If the human clan had only captured a Ghost Clan saint, or even a quasi-saint great venerable, the Ghost Clan might not have cared. However, the human clan had captured the great sage of the Ghost Clan this time. After all, the great sage meant a lot to a clan. Even the Ghost Clan only had 5 the great sage in total. The loss of any one of them would be a great blow to the Ghost Clan. Therefore, no matter how one looked at it, the Ghost Clan would not continue to fight the human clan. Moreover, if the Ghost Clan and the human clan fought until both sides suffered, the other clans would benefit in the end. Thinking of this, Shao Chun secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he chatted with Shao Shang for a while. Because Shao Shang was very weak at the moment and wanted a rest, Shao Chun also got up and left. The human clan was doing their best to treat the wounded and clean up the battlefield, and so was the Ghost Clan. On the other side of the Wana mountain range, in the aristocratic residence, the Ghost Clan was not in a good mood like the human clan. They thought that they could defeat the human race in one fell swoop, but they didn't expect that the ghost race would be defeated in the end. Who would have thought that the dragon race would come to the aid of the human race? Even more so, who would have thought that Gui Yintian would be defeated by Shao Chun? And who would have thought that Shao Chun's strength could grow to such a level? In the central great hall of the ghost race's encampment, Gui Fun and the other great saints of the ghost race sat together with gloomy expressions. Gui Fun first asked about Gui Yintian's situation. How is Yintian? The situation is not good. I'm seriously injured. Fortunately, I used ghost concealment in time to escape. However, it will be difficult for me to recover from my injuries in a short period of time. Moreover, my state of mind seems to have suffered quite a blow. It was reasonable for Gui Yintian to be heavily injured. However, compared to his physical injuries, Gui Yintian's mental injuries were far more severe. In this battle, not only had Shao Chun defeated Gui Yintian, he had also dealt a heavy blow to his confidence. Hearing this, Gui Fin said coldly, Yintian will not be defeated by such a small matter. Try your best to treat him. As for the rest, it's up to Yintian himself. Now, let's talk about what to do next. Gui Yintian had suffered a heavy blow from Shao Chun. However, Gui Fin didn't believe that Gui Yintian would fall because of this. Since Gui Yintian could become the first holy son of the ghost race, it would be strange if he was defeated so easily. Since his life wasn't in danger, there was no need to worry. As for the crack in his state of mind, it would be up to Gui Yintian himself. If he couldn't endure it, then Gui Fun and the others wouldn't be able to do anything. They didn't discuss Gui Yintian anymore. After this battle, Gui Fun and the others were faced with a very important decision: to fight or not to fight. The ghost race had suffered a crushing defeat in the first battle. Should they continue to fight or negotiate with the human race? However, if they wanted to negotiate, then the ghost race would have to give compensation. Otherwise, if they didn't fight and didn't give any compensation, then the human race would definitely not agree. Hearing Gui Fun's words, Gui Shuang and the other two's expressions turned solemn. They had never expected this situation. After a moment of silence, Gui Shuang was the first to speak. Let's negotiate. Elder Gui, he is still in the hands of the human race. Gui, he was the great saint of the ghost race, trapped in the sky-locked Grand Formation. At the same time, he was also a great elder of the Ghost King Palace. Gui Shuang proposed to negotiate. Hearing this, Gui, Fun, and the other two's expressions turned ugly, but they didn't object. If Gui he hadn't fallen into the hands of the human race, then perhaps Gui, Fun, and the others would continue to fight. But now, Gui he was in the hands of the human race. If they chose to continue fighting, then Gui he would definitely be the first to die. The great sage's importance to the ghost race was self-evident. Thus, even if it was for Gui he's life, Gui, Fun, and the others could only choose to stop fighting and negotiate. However, Gui, Fun, and the others still felt humiliated to have to negotiate with the human race. After all, the ghost race had always been stronger than the human race. But now, they had fallen to the point where they had to take the initiative to negotiate with the human race. They felt aggrieved and unwilling, but what could they do? Unless they could give up on Gui he's life, but that was impossible. Gui he was the great sage, and the ghost race couldn't afford to lose him. After a moment of silence, Gui, Fun said helplessly in the end, "Send someone to see if the human race is willing to negotiate." In the end, they made their choice. Xiao Chun didn't know what had happened in the ghost race. At this moment, he returned to Qin Shiru and the others' residence. The night passed silently. The ghost race didn't do anything at all. Early the next morning, the ghost race sent a saint to state that they wanted to negotiate. Yin Yangzi and the others didn't make things difficult for the ghost race saint. After all, he was just a messenger. Killing him wouldn't affect the ghost race at all, so there was no need to make things difficult for him. Moreover, the fact that the ghost race had taken the initiative to negotiate was actually exactly what Yin Yangzi and the others wanted. After all, both the ghost race and the human race wanted to negotiate. The human race's strength had never been at the top amongst the 100 races in the Central World. This time, they relied on the dragon race's support to defeat the ghost race. If the two races were to continue fighting like this, then the final outcome would actually be very difficult to predict. Don't think that everything will be fine just because the human race won this battle. After all, a large part of the reason for their victory was the dragon race. Once the battle between the two races became more intense, would the dragon race continue to help the human race? After all, they weren't from the same race, so it was impossible for the dragon race to fight to the death for the human race. Once the dragon race withdrew, would the human race still be a match for the ghost race? After all, the dragon race's strength wasn't the strength of the human race, so relying on external forces wouldn't last long. So, Yin Yangzi and the others actually didn't want to continue fighting the ghost race to the death, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1490. The Ghost Clan's initiative to propose peace talks was exactly what Yin Yangzi and the others wanted. Therefore, the three of them did not refuse and quickly agreed on a location for the peace talks with Gui Mu and the others. The location of the peace talks was in the Wanha mountain range, but it was not near the camps of the two sides. This was to prevent the other side from playing any tricks. At the same time, during the peace talks, each side could only send the great sage. Other cultivators could not approach. The two sides did not have any objections to this. After all, this was a very normal thing. The peace talks were set for the next day. When Xiao Chun heard the news, he was not too surprised because he had already expected it. Seeing that Xiao Chun did not care about the peace talks, Gu Lingyao unhappily said, "Why don't you care at all?" This time, the Ghost Clan initiated the peace talks. It was Gu Lingyao who brought the news back. Xiao Qin did not know from whom she heard it, but Xiao Qin did not care about this. Hearing this, he smiled slightly. The peace talks are inevitable. The Ghost Clan initiated the peace talks, and the human clan does not want to fight to the death with the Ghost Clan, so there is nothing strange about this. He did not find it strange. Hearing this, Gu Lingyao unhappily snorted and said, "You are so boring. I am ignoring you." When Gu Lingyao brought back this news, she thought that Xiao Chun would be shocked. Who would have thought that Xiao Chun did not take it seriously at all? This made the little girl unhappy. After saying this, Gu Lingyao directly ran to find 100 Flower Fairy. In response, Xiao Chun shook his head with a smile and did not mind. If the two clans agreed to the peace talks, the Ghost clan would definitely give some compensation. But what would they give? The Heavenly Lost Stone? This should not be possible. After all, the Heavenly Lost Stone was too precious. Gui Mu and the others would definitely not agree. The Heavenly Lost Stone was impossible. It seemed that it would most likely be some cultivation resources. The next morning, Enyangzi and the other two, as well as the great sage of the Dragon Clan, Long Kunyan, headed towards the agreed-upon location. As the great sage, Long Kunyan had indeed helped them greatly this time around. Thus, he naturally had the qualifications to participate in the peace talks this time around. The four great holy emperors left. At the same time, Gui Mu's group of four also left the Ghost Race's encampment. Both sides didn't bring anyone else. Of course, these little tricks were meaningless. When facing a quasi-sage, even if one wanted to set up an ambush, it would be impossible to stop the great sage unless there were several hundred quasi-sages and saints. Otherwise, if the great sage wanted to leave, one wouldn't be able to stop him. Those small actions didn't have much meaning, so both sides consciously came to the meeting place according to the agreement. The agreed meeting place was at the tallest mountain peak in the Wana mountain range. Because it was far from where both sides were stationed, the battle yesterday did not affect this place. They arrived at almost the same time. When Enyangzi's group of four appeared on the mountain peak, Gui Mu's group of four also appeared. The great sage from both sides had gathered. Gui Mu's group of four didn't look too good, but they still maintained their composure and didn't act out. The 8 of them came to the center of the mountain peak, took out a praying mat, and sat down facing each other. Enyangzi sat opposite Gui Mu and looked at Enyangzi. Gui Mu took the initiative to speak first. Speak. What does the human clan want? Clearly, Ghost Grave didn't want to talk nonsense with Enyangzi. He didn't even want to waste a second here. Therefore, he went straight to the point and asked what the human race wanted. Since the peace talks were initiated by the Ghost Clan naturally had to compensate the human clan. Besides, not only the human clan, but also the Dragon Clan. Of course, the compensation from the Dragon Clan was only incidental. The human clan was still the most important. Upon hearing Gui Mu's words, Enyangzi's expression didn't change much. He said indifferently, "The Heavenly Tao Stone." He knew that the Ghost Clan wouldn't give the Heavenly Tao Stone to him. But since it was a negotiation, there was always room for negotiation. Therefore, the price he offered was naturally high. However, as soon as Enyangzi said the words Heavenly Tao Stone, Gui Mu interrupted him before he could finish his sentence. "Impossible, Enyangzi. Don't push your luck. The Heavenly Tao Stone would never be given to the human clan. Not even a single piece." Enyangzi sneered. "You don't want to? Then forget it. We'll go back and slay Gui Mu and continue to fight the Ghost Clan." Enyangzi threatened. Hearing this, Gui Mu's eyes burned with fury. Threat? He couldn't remember how many years it had been since he was threatened. Gui Mu had never been threatened before. Glaring coldly at Enyangzi, Gui Mu gnashed his teeth and said, "Enyangzi, don't go overboard. The Heavenly Tao Stone is impossible. Say something more practical." The Heavenly Tao Stone was impossible. No matter what, Gui Mu wouldn't use the Heavenly Tao Stone as compensation. Enyangzi's eyes glinted with a sneer. He naturally knew that the Heavenly Tao Stone was impossible. The reason why he said that earlier was just to raise the price. Upon hearing Gui Mu's words, Enyangzi sneered. "All right, since you put it that way, I'll take a step back. Needless to say, cultivation resources. I don't want to list them out one by one. Anyway, cultivation resources must be compensated. That's fine with you, right?" Compensation of cultivation resources. Gui Mu's expression turned for the better. Although he knew that the cultivation resources Enyangzi mentioned were definitely not a small number, it was much easier to accept compared to the Heavenly Tao Stone. Moreover, before coming, Gui Mu and the others had already thought it through. The cultivation resources had to be spat out to the human race. Otherwise, the human race wouldn't be able to negotiate with them. Since he was mentally prepared, Gui Mu didn't refute Enyangzi's words. Instead, he silently agreed. However, This was only Yin Yangzi's first request. There was a second request, and Gui Mu's face turned gloomy when he heard the second request. Also, other than cultivation resources, your ghost race must provide 2 complete sets of Ghost King bones. Ghost King bones? 2 complete corpses. Ghost Grave's face darkened when he heard this. Although the Ghost King bones weren't as precious as the heavenly Tao stone, they were still supreme treasures of the ghost race. Moreover, they were unique to the ghost race. No other race in the Central World had Ghost King bones. He had never imagined that Yin Yangzi would actually want the Ghost King bones, and 2 of them at that. Hearing this, Gui Mu's eyes were already firmly fixed on Yin Yangzi as he shouted furiously. Yin Yangzi, I've said it before. Don't go too far. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me. Chapter 1491. The Ghost Grave could provide cultivation resources, even if it was just a bit more. However, Yin Yangzi wanted the Ghost Monarch bones, and 2 complete ones at that. In an entire ghost race, there were only 8 complete Ghost Monarch bones, and Yin Yangzi wanted 2. It was no wonder that the Ghost Grave was so angry. The Ghost Monarch bones were the most precious treasures of the ghost race. Due to the different cultivation methods of the ghost race, when a great saint of the ghost race died, there was a chance that their bones would turn into Ghost Monarch bones. Of course, this was only a chance and not an absolute. This was why there were so few Ghost Monarch bones. The great sage's number was already very low. Moreover, not every great sage of the ghost race could turn into a Ghost Monarch bone after death. Therefore, the Ghost Monarch bones were the rarest treasures to the ghost race. The use of the Ghost Monarch bones was also very simple. It was similar to a secret technique. A cultivator could fuse with the Ghost Monarch bones and explode with a terrifying power for a short period of time. However, at the level of the Great Sage, any secret technique would be useless. This was why the Ghost Monarch bones were so precious. Moreover, it was not only the ghost race. Any other race could fuse with the Ghost Monarch bones, allowing them to explode with power in a short period of time. This was the most precious part of the Ghost Monarch bones. Otherwise, if only the ghost race could use it, then the Ghost Monarch bones would be worthless to the other races. At the level of the Great Sage, the Ghost Monarch bones were the only treasure in the Central World that could increase a cultivator's power. He angrily glared at Yin Yangzi. Seeing this, Yin Yangzi did not back down this time and said with a gloomy expression, "Ghost Grave, am I going too far, or are you going too far? Let's not talk about the heavenly Tao stone from before, but you still won't give us the Ghost Monarch bones. What is this? Is there no sincerity? If there is no sincerity, then is there a need to negotiate?" Yin Yangzi had never thought about obtaining the heavenly Tao stone, but the Ghost King bone was something that Yin Yangzi was determined to obtain. Furthermore, these 2 Ghost King bones would not belong to the human race. One of them would be given to the dragon race. This was something that Yin Yangzi and the others had already discussed with Long Cunyon last night. One of them belonged to the dragon race. Therefore, Long Cunyon spoke up at this moment. "Ghost Grave, forget about the heavenly lost stone, but you have to give me the Ghost King bone. Otherwise, my dragon tribe won't mind beating you up. You should know that I'm the only one here. But if the Dragon Emperor comes in the future, 2 Ghost King bones won't be enough." Long Cunyon was also extremely jealous of the Ghost King bone. Thus, he naturally spoke up for Yin Yangzi. At the same time, Long Cunyon did not hide his ruthless threat towards Gui Mu. Even though it was impossible for the dragon race to send out any more powerful beings to support the human race, the ghost race did not know about this. Therefore, Long Cunyon did not even blush when he said these words. Hearing these words, Gui Mu's face turned extremely ugly. He had to be wary of the dragon race. Furthermore, if the dragon race were to help the human race with all their might, then the ghost race would definitely be hard-pressed to deal with them. After all, there were 3 the great sage beings in the dragon race. In terms of strength, they were not much weaker than this human. To be honest, Gui Mu could not bear to part with the 2 Ghost King bones. However, given the situation before him, he had no way of objecting. Who knew if the dragon race would go all out and fight against the ghost race together with the human race? He turned his gaze towards Gui Shuang and the other two beside him. Facing Gui Mu's gaze, the three of them were also grim. However, they nodded their heads gently. Their intentions were clear. They agreed to Yangzi's request. Since Gui Shuang and the other two had agreed, Gui Mu had no choice but to agree as well. In this negotiation, Yangzi had indeed grasped the situation well. He had managed to obtain sufficient benefits without crossing the bottom line of the ghost race. In other words, he had made a huge profit. They agreed to hand over the compensation 3 days later, including the 2 Ghost King bones. Of course, the human race would also have to release the ghost crane that was trapped in the Skylock array. After reaching an agreement, Gui Mu and the other 3 immediately left. When they left, one could tell that the 4 of them were extremely depressed. After successfully settling the matter of the peace talks, Yangzi and the other 3 heaved a sigh of relief. After returning to the encampment of the human race, the 4 of them waited for 3 days. If the ghost race handed over the compensation, then the human race would release the ghost crane. However, if the ghost race returned, then Yangzi and the other 3 would kill the ghost crane immediately. The peace talks were very successful. At night, Xiao Chen also received news of the peace talks. However, at this time, Xiao Chen did not care about the results of the peace talks at all. This was because Xiao Chen was currently in a state of excitement. Just a moment ago, a mysterious energy descended from the sky and enveloped him. Then, Xiao Chen felt a message enter his mind. The content of the message was very simple. It was that Xiao Chen had also obtained the approval of the will of the Heavenly Way and was bestowed with the Heavenly Way's protection. Xiao Chen was definitely no stranger to the Heavenly Way's protection. Back at the Human Race Hero Assembly, Long Yang had used the Heavenly Way's protection against Xianyuan Baijian. He knew that Long Yang and the other 2 had this privilege. They could communicate with the will of the Heavenly Way and receive the Heavenly Way's protection. Once the Heavenly Way's protection was bestowed, the person protected by the Heavenly Way's protection would not be harmed for 3 days. During this time, even the great sage would not be able to do anything. He never thought that he would also receive the Heavenly Way's protection. How could Xiao Chen not be excited? This was equivalent to having an extra life. After all, the Heavenly Way's protection was something that even the great sage would not be able to do anything about. In the past, only Long Yang and the other 2 had received such a reward. Now, Xiao Chen had also received the Heavenly Way's protection, becoming the 4th person in the Central World to receive the Heavenly Way's protection. Bestowing the Heavenly Way's protection was the will of the Heavenly Way's recognition of Xiao Chen. It felt that Xiao Chen was already at the same level as Long Yang and the other 2. It gave Xiao Chen more protection, hoping that Xiao Chen would be able to grow up safely. He was excited. Soon, the mysterious power disappeared. However, Xiao Chen had already learned how to use the Heavenly Way's protection and communicate with the will of the Heavenly Way. As long as Xiao Chen wanted to, he could communicate with the will of the Heavenly Way at any time and place and have it bestow the Heavenly Way's protection. Moreover, the Heavenly Way's protection could not only be used on himself, but also on others. It was just like how Long Yang had used his Heavenly Way's protection on Xiao Chen during the Human Race Hero Assembly. It was definitely the strongest life-saving trump card. Xiao Chen never thought that there would be such a pleasant surprise. He was overjoyed. In this way, whether it was himself or the people around him, they would be safer. It was indeed something to be happy about. Please add it to your collection. Monthly vote recommended. Chapter 1492. Xiao Chen did not expect himself to be protected by the heavenly law. He was elated for a long time. After a night of silence, 3 days later, the Ghost Clan delivered the compensation they had agreed on. At the same time, they withdrew from the Myriad Harmony mountain range. As for Yangzi and the others, they released the Ghost Crane as promised. The war between the 2 clans ended just like that. Many people did not expect the Ghost Clan to invade the Human Clan with such great fanfare, to snatch the heavenly lost stone from the human clan. However, the Ghost Clan was the first to ask for peace and paid a hefty price for it. The Ghost Clan naturally hated the human clan even more. However, what could they do? They had already lost, and the morale of the Ghost Clan was low. On the other hand, the human clan had the help of the Dragon Clan. For the time being, the Ghost Clan would not attack the human clan. The war ended temporarily, and the Ghost Clan retreated. The cultivators of the human clan secretly heaved a sigh of relief. At the same time, Enyangzi and the other two gave the Ghost Clan some of the compensation to the Dragon Clan. Although the Dragon Clan did not ask for any compensation, they had already helped them. Now that they had one, it would be unreasonable if they did not express their gratitude. Long Kunyan did not reject Enyangzi and the other two's actions. He accepted it calmly. After all, the Dragon Clan had also suffered losses in this war. It was reasonable for them to take some compensation. That day, Long Kunyan led the experts of the Dragon Clan and left. The human clan also began to withdraw from the Wana mountain range. Of course, they left some people behind to guard against the Ghost Clan. After returning to Clear Sky City, no one dared to slander Xiao Chun after this battle. The news of Xiao Chun defeating the Ghost Clan's number one holy son, Gue Yintian, had already spread. Everyone knew that the previous rumors were complete nonsense. Xiao Chun was not afraid of the Ghost Clan's number one holy son, Gue Yintian. After returning to Clear Sky City, Xiao Sheng and the others were still recuperating. Xiao Chun was the same as before. He was immersed in cultivation every day. When he was free, he would accompany Qin Shu and the other two ladies. Days passed. After the ghost race retreated, no other race came to attack the human race. After all, now that the 100 Race War had begun, the conflicts between the major races had yet to completely erupt. For example, the celestial race, the god race, the demon race, and so on, their current targets were the weakest races. He would first obtain the heavenly Tao stones from the weaker races before dealing with the stronger races. The god race, the devil race, and the celestial race were all like this. And after several days of recuperation, Enyangzi and the other two gathered together. They also had the same plan. In the vicinity of the human territory, there were also some weaker races. These weaker races were completely incomparable to the human race in terms of strength. Perhaps there wasn't even a single the great sage in their race. These races were very weak, so their territories were naturally not big. However, there were still one or two heavenly Tao stones that fell into their territories. At this time, Enyangzi and the other two gathered together. Their target was a small race called the Night Race in the vicinity of the human territory. The Night Race was located in the southwest of the human territory. They were very weak and did not have many people. Their territory was pitifully small, not even a quarter of the size of the human race. Moreover, the strongest person in the race was only a half-step great sage. This kind of strength was naturally not worth mentioning to the human race. Therefore, Enyangzi and the other two set their sights on the Night Race. According to their estimation, the Night Race should have 2 heavenly Tao stones in their hands. These were the ones that had fallen into the Night Race's territory. Although 2 heavenly Tao stones were not much, they were definitely very precious. Naturally, the Night Race was not qualified to possess such precious treasures. Weakness was the original sin. Many things in this world were still like this. If you were not strong enough, then you were not qualified to possess many things. In the main palace of Haotian City, Enyangzi and the other two discussed for a while. They immediately decided to make a trip to the Night Race and ask for the 2 heavenly Tao stones. With the strength of the Night Race, they did not have any power to resist in front of the human race. Therefore, the Night Race should not refuse. There were no objections to this. At this time, Xing Zhantian looked at Enyangzi and Xianyuan Wudi and said, "Then, which of the 3 of us will go?" "I'll go." Hearing this, Enyangzi said lightly. Only one the great sage was needed to go. It was enough to make the entire Night Race unable to muster the slightest power to resist. Hearing Enyangzi's words, Xing Zhantian nodded and said, "All right, then it's decided." Yangzi and the other two set their sights on the night race. This kind of thing happened everywhere in the Central world. Those weak races were naturally the first targets. Because they were weak, they were not qualified to possess the heavenly Tao stones. Therefore, it was better to give it to those strong races. Small races like the night race were the first targets to be eliminated during the War of the 100 Races. The heavenly Tao stones in their hands would be taken away before they could even warm them up. Early the next morning, Yangzi directly rushed to the night race. He did not bring many people, only 2 half-step great sages. In addition to Yangzi, the 3 of them rushed to the night race. It was just 3 people, but this was enough to suppress the night race. This was because the strongest cultivator in the night race was only a half-step great sage, and there was only one of them. Yangzi's departure did not attract too much attention. On the day after Yangzi left, Xiao Chun, who was cultivating in the courtyard, also received news about Chunling. The news was obtained by the Sacred Palace. All along, Xiao Chun had been paying attention to news about Chunling, but there was no result. Today, Qin personally came to Xiao Chun and said that someone saw Chunling appear in the Xianyuan clan. Chunling went to the Xianyuan clan? Xiao Chun was slightly taken aback when he heard Yu's words. He did not know why Chunling went to the Xianyuan clan. Looking at Yu, Xiao Chun asked, "Do you know why my big brother went to the Xianyuan clan?" Yu shook his head, indicating that he did not know. Chunling actually went to the Xianyuan clan. Knowing the matter between Chunling and the Xianyuan clan, Xiao Chun did not think that Chunling went to the Xianyuan clan to acknowledge his ancestors. Xiao Chun felt a little uneasy. Originally, he planned to rush to the Xianyuan clan himself, but on second thought, it was definitely not possible for him to go alone. Because he killed Xianyuan Baijian, the relationship between Xiao Chun and the Xianyuan clan could be said to be very tense. Although Xianyuan Wudi did not take revenge on him because of the 100 Race War, this was only because of the 100 Race War. Xianyuan Wudi might be able to maintain restraint in Haotian City, but if Xiao Chun went to the Xianyuan clan, wouldn't that be challenging the Xianyuan clan's bottom line? Moreover, he still did not know why Chunling went to the Xianyuan clan. If Xiao Chun rashly went to the Xianyuan clan at this time, perhaps not only would he not be able to help Chunling, but he would also very likely bring trouble to him. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendations. Chapter 1493. Xiao Chun did not dare to act rashly because he did not know why Chunling had gone to the Xianyuan clan. After all, in his current situation, if he rashly went to the Xianyuan clan, he would probably cause trouble for Chunling. After a moment of silence, Xiao Chun said to Chunyu, "Pay attention to my big brother's movements. Let me know if anything happens." He did not intend to act rashly for the time being. He wanted to see what Chunling was going to do in the Xianyuan clan. By the time Xiao Chun received the news about Chunling, Chunling had already snuck into the Xianyuan clan. The Xianyuan clan was a great saint clan that had been passed down since ancient times. It was located at the foot of Shoshan. There was a huge manor here, and this manor was where the Xianyuan clan resided. Due to the start of the 100 Clan War, the experts of the various major forces of the human clan had actually gathered in Clear Sky City. Therefore, there were no experts in the Xianyuan clan, and only 2 saints were left to guard it. With 2 saints, the defense force was obviously very weak. Chunling had been alone for the past few years. Although no one knew where he had gone, Chunling's cultivation had also reached the limit of the Saint Mastery realm. He was only a step away from breaking through to the Saint Perfection realm. With such cultivation and Chunling's own combat strength, it was not difficult for him to sneak into the Xianyuan clan, which currently had no experts guarding it. The entire Xianyuan clan's manor occupied a huge area, just like a city. Moreover, in the manor, in addition to the Xianyuan clan's direct descendants and collateral disciples, there were many guards, maids, and servants. Under the cover of the night, Chunling quietly sneaked into the Xianyuan clan's manor. The 2 Xianyuan clan saints who stayed behind to guard the manor did not notice anything amiss. After easily killing a guard, Chunling put on his clothes. After a simple disguise, he headed towards the depths of the manor. Chunling was both familiar and unfamiliar with the Xianyuan clan's manor. After all, he had not stepped into this place for many years. There were many new buildings, but there were still many old traces that Chunling was familiar with. A complicated expression flashed through Chunling's eyes as he walked through the manor of the Xianyuan clan. Although Chunling had almost completely fallen out with the Xianyuan clan because of Xianyuan Wudi, he was still a member of the Xianyuan clan no matter what. Moreover, Chunling used to be an existence that stood above everyone else. He was one of the 3 elders of the Xianyuan clan, and his status was second only to the patriarch. He had originally thought that he would never be able to set foot in the Xianyuan clan again, but in the end, Chunling had still come here. Of course, Chunling had not come here to reminisce. Chunling walked towards the depths of the manor according to his memories. Chunling's goal was Xianyuan Wudi's residence. The reason why he wanted to go there was because of Chunling's experience outside. Before Xiao Chun, Chunling had left the Heavenly Yin Sun sect without telling anyone where he lived. In fact, Chunling had gone to an ancient relic of the Xianyuan clan. Only Chunling knew about this ancient relic. Even Xianyuan Wudi did not know about it. It was the previous patriarch, Xianyuan Songtao, who told Chunling. As a person who had been reborn, Chunling's cultivation was almost inseparable from that of the Xianyuan clan. Therefore, if he wanted to break through quickly, the best place for him to go was naturally that ancient relic. After so many years, that ancient relic had indeed not been discovered by anyone. Even Xianyuan Wudi did not know about its existence. In this ancient relic, Chunling had obtained great benefits. His cultivation had also directly broken through to the limit of the sage realm great completion. However, it was also here that Chunling learned a shocking secret about Xianyuan Wudi. Back then, Xia Qingqing's death was entirely because of Xianyuan Wudi. In order to save Xia Qingqing, Chunling had gone to the Dragon Clan alone. However, in the end, he was still unable to save Xia Qingqing's life. Chunling himself had died and was fortunately reborn in the Tianqian continent. Xianyuan Wudi had launched a sneak attack on Xia Qingqing and Chunling because of a treasure in an ancient relic. That treasure could help Xianyuan Wudi break through to the Great Saint Realm. Chunling had told this to Xiao Chun. However, as for what happened after Chunling's death and rebirth, even Chunling himself did not know about it. This time, in that ancient relic, Chunling knew everything. It turned out that after Xianyuan Wudi had assassinated Chunling and Xia Qingqing, he had returned to the Xianyuan clan alone and announced to the public that Chunling and Xia Qingqing had died. As for what happened to Chunling back then, the Xianyuan clan had also investigated. However, the Dragon Clan had indeed attacked and killed Chunling. The Xianyuan clan had nothing to say about this and did not dare to ask the Dragon Clan for an explanation. At that time, Xianyuan Wudi had not yet become the head of the Xianyuan clan. At that time, the head of the Xianyuan clan was called Xianyuan Songtao. It could be said that he was the uncle of Chunling and Xianyuan Wudi. He was a figure of the same generation as their father. At that time, Xianyuan Songtao was the head of the Xianyuan clan. After Chunling's death and rebirth, in just a few short decades, Xianyuan Wudi had successfully taken a step forward and broken through to the Great Saint Realm. At that time, following Xianyuan Wudi's breakthrough, the Xianyuan clan suddenly had one more, the Great Sage. This caused the strength of the entire Xianyuan clan to skyrocket. It could almost be said to be the greatest power of the human clan. After all, the Yin-Yang sect and the Haotian alliance only had one the Great Sage in each sect. At that time, the Xianyuan clan had two the Great Sage, Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Wudi. Originally, they thought that with Xianyuan Wudi's breakthrough, the Xianyuan clan would begin to rise. However, no one expected that just a few months later, Xianyuan Songtao would mysteriously disappear. There were rumors that Xianyuan Songtao had gone to the territory of the Ghost Clan and was killed by the Ghost Clan's Great Sage. However, this was only a rumor. No one had seen it with their own eyes. Since Xianyuan Songtao had mysteriously disappeared, as the great sage of the Xianyuan clan, Xianyuan Wudi naturally became the new head of the Xianyuan clan. Originally, there was nothing too strange about this matter. Chunling did not care about it. However, this time, in the ancient ruins, Chunling saw a technique relaying jade that Xianyuan Songtao had left behind. However, what was recorded in this technique relaying jade was not a cultivation method. It was something that had happened in the past. In fact, Xianyuan Songtao had never been to the Ghost Clan. He was not killed by any Ghost Clan's great sage. In fact, he was secretly killed by Xianyuan Wudi. It was completely unexpected that Xianyuan Wudi would actually secretly kill Xianyuan Songtao. After all, Xianyuan Songtao was almost equivalent to Chunling and Xianyuan Wudi's father. Since young, Xianyuan Songtao had raised Chunling and Xianyuan Wudi. He was the one who had taught them how to cultivate. However, Xianyuan Wudi had actually harmed him. Please collect, monthly vote, recommend. Chapter 1494. After Xianyuan Wudi broke through to the Great Sage Realm, he began to have evil intentions towards the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan. However, this momentum was expected. Anyway, Chunling knew very well that Xianyuan Wudi had always been a very ambitious person. Moreover, he would do anything to achieve his goals. Before his cultivation had broken through to the Great Saint Realm, Xianyuan Wudi might have been able to restrain the evil thoughts in his heart. But after his cultivation had broken through and he had become a great saint emperor, he naturally couldn't restrain the evil thoughts in his heart. They were both the great sage. Why couldn't Xianyuan Wudi become the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan? Therefore, after Xianyuan Wudi broke through to the Great Saint Realm, he began to think of ways to seize the position of patriarch. If he wanted to succeed, he first had to get rid of Xianyuan Songtao. If Xianyuan Songtao didn't die, Xianyuan Wudi would never be able to become the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan. Thinking of this, Xianyuan Wudi also began a plan. After spending a lot of effort, Xianyuan Wudi found a stalk of nirvana grass. The nirvana grass was a peak saint realm spiritual herb. It had no use, but it was extremely poisonous. Even the great sage would find it difficult to resist. With the nirvana grass, Xianyuan Wudi extracted the poison from it and found an opportunity to feed it to Xianyuan Songtao. After consuming the nirvana grass, Xianyuan Songtao's combat strength was immediately reduced. He could only use less than 10% of his combat strength. Under such circumstances, Xianyuan Wudi naturally chose to attack without mercy. He was prepared to kill Xianyuan Songtao in one fell swoop. Although Xianyuan Wudi trusted Xianyuan Songtao very much, Xianyuan Songtao was not on guard at all. However, when he discovered that he was poisoned, it was already too late. With the poison in his body, he was naturally no match for Xianyuan Wudi. However, Xianyuan Wudi did not expect Xianyuan Songtao to suddenly take out an ice coffin at the moment of his death. Then his entire body lay in the ice coffin. Moreover, at the last moment, Xianyuan Songtao used the last of his strength to send the key to the ice coffin and the jade that recorded the truth to the ancient ruins that only he and Chunling knew about. It was because of this that Chunling knew what had happened back then and obtained the key to the ice coffin. Xianyuan Songtao didn't die. Because of the ice coffin, Xianyuan Wudi couldn't do anything to Xianyuan Songtao. It was unknown where Xianyuan Songtao had obtained this ice coffin. Even the great sage could not break it. Over the years, Xianyuan Wudi had tried countless methods to break it, but to no avail. It was useless against the ice coffin. After countless attempts, Xianyuan Wudi finally came to a conclusion. Unless he had the key, it was impossible to open the hotel. Unable to kill Xianyuan Songtao, Xianyuan Wudi also tried to find the whereabouts of the key. However, the Central World was a big shot. Who knew where Xianyuan Songtao had hidden the key? After a fruitless search, Xianyuan Wudi could only hide Xianyuan Songtao, who had fallen into a state of suspended animation in the ice coffin. He then announced that Xianyuan Songtao was dead, and in the end, he became the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan. If Chunling hadn't gone to the ancient ruins, no one would have known about this. Xianyuan Songtao would probably have slept in the ice coffin forever. Chunling was very close to Xianyuan Songtao. The two of them were like father and son. As a result, Chunling did not hesitate at all after learning about this. He hurried to the Xianyuan clan as soon as possible and prepared to save Xianyuan Songtao. He followed his memory all the way to the depths of the Xianyuan clan's manor. Along the way, Chunling captured a guard and asked about Xianyuan Wudi's residence. He was not discovered along the way. Of course, this was also because there were no experts in the Xianyuan clan right now. Otherwise, Chunling would not have been able to sneak into the manor under normal circumstances. Soon, he arrived at Xianyuan Wudi's residence and directly leapt in. Because Xianyuan Wudi was not in the Xianyuan clan right now, he was in the Haotian alliance, so there was naturally no one in his residence. As for the servants and maids, they were not a problem for Chunling at all. He easily dealt with them. Without drawing anyone's attention, Chunling killed all the guards and maids in the Xianyuan clan's cave. He ignored the corpses on the ground and began to search for Xianyuan Songtao's whereabouts. Since Xianyuan Wudi had secretly killed Xianyuan Songtao, Xianyuan Wudi definitely could not let others know about this, including the people of the Xianyuan clan. After all, Xianyuan Songtao's prestige in the Xianyuan clan was extremely high. If the clansmen of the Xianyuan clan found out that Xianyuan Songtao had been killed by Xianyuan Wudi, then there would probably be many who refused to accept Xianyuan Wudi as the patriarch. So, this matter could only be kept a secret to Xianyuan Wudi. Since it was like that, it was absolutely impossible for Xianyuan Wudi to imprison Xianyuan Songtao in the Xianyuan clan's dungeon. In this way, Xianyuan Wudi's abode was naturally the best place. After all, as the patriarch of the clan, not just anyone could enter Xianyuan Wudi's abode. It was even to the extent that without Xianyuan Wudi's orders, even the three elders couldn't enter Xianyuan Wudi's abode at will. In this way, this was clearly the best place to hide Xianyuan Songtao. Chunling searched all along the way, but he didn't notice Xianyuan Songtao's whereabouts even after he searched the entire abode. He arrived at the main courtyard and frowned slightly. Could it be that he isn't here? Could it be that Xianyuan Songtao isn't here? But if he isn't here, then where could he be? As he thought, Chunling didn't give up and started searching once more. This time, Chunling practically searched every nook and cranny of the entire abode. In the end, Chunling found a very obscure palm-sized talisman formation at the rockery in the back garden. Moreover, there was a talisman formation inscribed on it. Obviously, this talisman formation didn't have any use, and it seemed like it was just a switch. Chunling didn't think too much about it, and directly placed his hand on the talisman formation before injecting his spirit energy into it. Sure enough, the talisman formation activated, and the rockery slowly opened up, and then a passageway that led underground appeared before Chunling. Chunling's intuition told him that such a secretive passageway was definitely the place where Xianyuan Wudi was hiding Xianyuan Songtao. He immediately walked down the passageway with quick steps. At the same time that Chunling discovered the passageway, Xianyuan Wudi, who was countless thousands of kilometers away, suddenly opened his eyes while cultivating with his eyes closed, and a wisp of coldness flashed through his eyes as he said, "Who is it? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 1495. Xianyuan Wudi immediately sensed that Chunling had triggered the talisman formation. Xianyuan Songtao's matter was definitely Xianyuan Wudi's weakness. Therefore, it could be said that he had spent a lot of effort on Xianyuan Songtao. Not only did he build a secret room under the rockery, but he also used a talisman array as a switch. At the same time, Xianyuan Wudi also connected the talisman array with a law. As long as someone triggered the talisman array, no matter how far away they were, Xianyuan Wudi would be able to sense it immediately. He was in Haotian City, but the talisman array was punished. Xianyuan Wudi did not hesitate at all. He moved and immediately disappeared from the room, rushing in the direction of the transmission array in Haotian City. If it was something else, Xianyuan Wudi would not be so nervous. However, since it was related to Xianyuan Songtao, Xianyuan Wudi could not ignore it. He immediately rushed towards the teleportation formation of Haotian City. At the same time, Chunling quickly arrived at the secret room under the rockery. Sure enough, the secret chamber wasn't very big, and there was nothing inside except for an ice coffin. Upon seeing the ice coffin, Chunling took a few steps forward and arrived in front of it. Through the ice coffin, he could see that there was indeed an old man sleeping within. To Chunling, this old man was extremely familiar. It was Xianyuan Songtao. Chunling's eyes turned red. He looked at Xianyuan Songtao, who had been sleeping quietly in the ice coffin for many years. He choked and said, "Uncle, I'm late." He did not expect that Xianyuan Wudi, this bastard, would even lay his hands on Xianyuan Songtao. He was worse than a beast. Because of the ice coffin, he could not sense Xianyuan Songtao's aura at all. However, Chunling was sure that Xianyuan Songtao was still alive. He had just fallen into a state of suspended animation. He originally planned to open the ice coffin here, but he did not know how long it would take. Moreover, Chunling also suspected that Xianyuan Wudi might have some other tricks up his sleeve. After all, Xianyuan Songtao's matter was too important to Xianyuan Wudi. He definitely couldn't expose it. Based on Chunling's understanding of Xianyuan Wudi, this person was very cautious. Therefore, he was afraid that Xianyuan Wudi would leave some backup plans. This was not a place to stay for long. With Chunling's current strength, he was no match for Xianyuan Wudi. When he thought of this, Chunling did not hesitate. He immediately carried guest house and flew out of the secret room. The way to the ice coffin was nothing to Chunling. There was almost no pressure at all. Of course, Chunling had also tried to store the ice coffin in his storage ring, but he did not succeed. Perhaps it was because of Xianyuan Songtao. After all, storage rings could only store inanimate objects, not living things. In fact, it was precisely because the ice coffin could not be stored in a storage ring. Otherwise, Xianyuan Wudi would have carried it with him. After all, it was definitely the safest to keep it with him. Unfortunately, he couldn't do that. Moreover, Xianyuan Wudi couldn't carry an ice coffin everywhere he went. Moreover, once the ice coffin appeared, Xianyuan Songtao's matter would be exposed. Carrying the ice coffin, Chunling instantly charged out of Xianyuan Wudi's cave dwelling. Along the way, whenever he encountered a guard from the Xianyuan clan, Chunling would immediately attack, not giving them the slightest chance to react. With the start of the 100 Clan War, the experts of the Xianyuan clan had all gone to Clear Sky City. At this moment, the guards who were still in the Xianyuan clan's manor were all below the Dao King realm. Those who were not even at the Dao King realm were naturally vulnerable in front of Chunling. There was no longer any need to hide his whereabouts. Chunling killed his way out of the Xianyuan clan's manor at the fastest speed and then charged into the darkness together. Just as Chunling charged out of the Xianyuan clan's manor, Xianyuan Wudi strode out of the Xianyuan clan's teleportation array. Without any hesitation, he immediately charged toward his own manor. Almost in the blink of an eye, Xianyuan Wudi appeared in the secret room under the rockery. However, at this moment, the secret room was already empty. The ice coffin that was placed in the middle of the secret room had also disappeared. Looking at the disappearing ice coffin, Xianyuan Wudi's expression was extremely unsightly. It was even more unsightly than when Xiao Chun killed Xianyuan Baijian. Actually, this was normal. Xianyuan Wudi could tolerate Xiao Chun killing Xianyuan Baijian for the sake of the bigger picture. However, when it came to Xianyuan Songtao, Xianyuan Wudi could not tolerate it all, because once Xianyuan Songtao's matter was exposed, Xianyuan Wudi's reputation would be ruined. At that time, not only would the other sects look down on him, but even many people in the Xianyuan clan would want to avenge Xianyuan Songtao. Of course, the most important problem was that Xianyuan Songtao was still alive. If Xianyuan Songtao woke up, Xianyuan Wudi dared not imagine what would happen to him. At that time, Xianyuan Wudi would probably turn from the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan into a stray dog. The entire Xianyuan clan would probably hunt him down. Xianyuan Songtao's matter could not be exposed. This was the only thought in Xianyuan Wudi's mind. His eyes were overflowing with coldness. Xianyuan Wudi said coldly, "No matter who you are, I will definitely tear you into pieces." With that, Xianyuan Wudi's figure disappeared from where he was and appeared in the sky above the manor. He did not dare to reveal the slightest bit of his aura. Because of this matter, Xianyuan Wudi could not use the power of the Xianyuan clan. Otherwise, if Chunling was found by the people of the Xianyuan clan, wouldn't the hotel be seen by others? At that time, Xianyuan Songtao's matter would be exposed. Therefore, Xianyuan Wudi could only do it himself without alerting anyone. Xianyuan Wudi sensed Chunling's aura. Because Chunling had only left not long ago, and, as a great saint emperor, Xianyuan Wudi was extremely sensitive to auras, so Xianyuan Wudi quickly determined the direction Chunling had fled in. The killing intent in his eyes had already reached its peak. Xianyuan Wudi snorted coldly. "You can't escape." Xianyuan Wudi had already chased after Chunling. At the same time, Xiao Chun was in the Haoyan alliance. It was already late at night, but Chunyu suddenly came to visit. During the day, Chunyu had just told Xiao Chun about Chunling's whereabouts. And in the middle of the night, he came in a hurry. Seeing Chunyu, Xiao Chun also guessed something and asked worriedly, "What's wrong? Did something happen to my big brother?" "It should be, but I don't know for now. I only know that Chunling sneaked into the manor of the Xianyuan clan." Then, just now, Xianyuan Wudi suddenly returned to the Xianyuan clan. I think that Xianyuan Wudi's sudden return to the Xianyuan clan has something to do with Chunling. Chunyu naturally did not know about Xianyuan Songtao's matter, but Xianyuan Wudi's abnormal behavior made Chunyu guess a little. He felt that this matter should have something to do with Chunling, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 1496. Xianyuan Wudi had suddenly returned to the Xianyuan clan. Xiao Chen's face darkened when he heard Chunyu's words. At the same time, he agreed with Chunyu's guess. After all, Chunling had just snuck into the Xianyuan clan, and Xianyuan Wudi had rushed back in the middle of the night. There had to be something going on. Although Xiao Chan didn't know what had happened, if Xianyuan Wudi had really rushed back because of Chunling, then Chunling would be in danger. Even though Chunling had been reborn, he was definitely no match for Xianyuan Wudi now. Xiao Chun frowned and immediately said, "I'll go find Alliance leader Xing Zhantian now." Yin Yangzi wasn't in the human clan, and now the only person who could stop Xianyuan Wudi was Xing Zhantian. Therefore, Xiao Chen's first reaction was to go find Xing Zhantian. Naturally, he didn't think that he could stop Xianyuan Wudi by himself. Although Xiao Chun was now the fourth holy son on the saint rankings, he was still a far cry from the great sage. Without any hesitation, Xiao Chun went straight to Xing Zhantian's residence. On the other side, in Xiushan, where the Xianyuan clan resided, Chunling was carrying an ice coffin and quickly traversing through the void. For some reason, Chunling had a bad premonition. Therefore, Chunling wanted to leave the Xianyuan clan as soon as possible and find a safe place to open the ice coffin. However, although Chunling's speed was fast enough, compared to Xianyuan Wudi, who had the cultivation of a great sage, he was still a little slower. Less than an hour after escaping from the Xianyuan clan, Chunling, who was still hurrying through the void, suddenly saw a figure in the darkness in front of him. This figure was none other than Xianyuan Wudi, who had chased after Chunling's aura. He didn't stop along the way and finally caught up to Chunling after an hour. Looking at Chunling, Xianyuan Wudi's eyes flashed with surprise. He never thought that the person who took the ice coffin would be so young. Moreover, Xianyuan Wudi had seen Chunling when he was in the Taiyang sect. He seemed to be Xiao Chen's elder brother. A hint of doubt flashed across his eyes, but very quickly, Xianyuan Wudi's gaze locked onto the ice coffin behind Chunling. Looking at the ice coffin, Xianyuan Wudi's face instantly turned cold. Killing intent flashed in his eyes. "Little thief, do you know that it's not good to steal from others? Especially when it's from my Xianyuan clan." Xian Yuan Wudi was determined to kill Chen Ling. No matter what, no matter who Chen Ling was, Xian Yuan Wudi would not let him go. The reason was simple. Chen Ling had seen the ice coffin. Originally, Xian Yuan Wudi thought that Xian Yuan Songtao's matter had been discovered. However, after seeing Chen Ling, Xian Yuan Wudi thought that Chen Ling had snuck into the Xian Yuan clan to steal the treasure. In the end, he had found the ice coffin by accident. Perhaps he had seen that the ice coffin was extraordinary, so he had decided to steal it. With Chen Ling's age, it was impossible for him to know about Xian Yuan Songtao's matter. This was because when Chen Ling was born, Xian Yuan Songtao had already been dead for who knew how many years. Moreover, as time passed, very few people in the younger generation would have heard of Xian Yuan Songtao's name. He did not think that Chen Ling already knew about Xian Yuan Songtao's matter. However, no matter what, since Chen Ling had seen the ice coffin, he deserved to die. There was no other reason. The killing intent in his eyes was not concealed at all. As soon as he finished speaking, Xian Yuan Wudi immediately prepared to attack. He did not want to give Chen Ling any chance. Moreover, with Xian Yuan Wudi's strength, killing Chen Ling would be an easy task. He immediately prepared to attack. However, at this moment, Chen Ling's words made Xian Yuan Wudi's actions abruptly stop. Xian Yuan Wudi, you're really heartless. You actually dare to attack your own elder. Thinking back, if it wasn't for Xian Yuan Songtao, how could you have stepped onto the path of martial arts? How could you have reached such heights today? After being caught by Xian Yuan Wudi, Chen Ling's heart was already in despair. He did not expect Xian Yuan Wudi to discover him so quickly. He was simply no match for Xian Yuan Wudi. In fact, Chen Ling did not even have the chance to escape from Xian Yuan Wudi's hands. The difference in cultivation between the two was simply too great. There was no comparison at all. He already thought that he was going to die. Therefore, before he died, Chen Ling was not afraid of exposing anything. He did not even care about his own identity. His eyes were filled with hatred as he looked at Xian Yuan Wudi. When he heard Chen Ling's words, Xian Yuan Wudi's actions paused. Then, a cold light flashed in his eyes as he shouted in a deep voice, "Who are you?" Previously, he thought that Chen Ling did not know about Xian Yuan Songtao's matter. After all, Chen Ling was simply too young. However, when he heard Chen Ling's words, Xian Yuan Wudi knew that this kid in front of him clearly knew what happened back then. His theft of the ice coffin was probably not unintentional. It could be said that Chen Ling's goal was very clear. That was to steal the ice coffin and save Xian Yuan Songtao. This kid knew about what happened back then. However, how did he know? One should know that back then, not to mention Chen Ling, even his ancestors were not even born yet. Xian Yuan Wudi stared at Chen Ling and asked coldly. Previously, Xian Yuan Wudi did not pay much attention to Chen Ling. However, after hearing Chen Ling's words, Xian Yuan Wudi began to seriously size Chen Ling up. Strange. It was really strange. It was fine that he did not notice it earlier. However, at this moment, as Xian Yuan Wudi seriously sized Chen Ling up, he realized that he actually had a very familiar feeling towards Chen Ling. It was as if he was a friend that he had known for many years. Faced with Xian Yuan Wudi's doubts and sizing up, Chen Ling completely threw caution to the wind. His cold eyes were filled with hatred and killing intent as he looked at Xian Yuan Wudi and said coldly, "Back then, you ambushed Qin Sheng and obtained the heaven-defying inheritance in the ruins. From there, you stepped into the great saint realm. However, I did not expect that you would actually be able to kill Uncle in the end. Xian Yuan Wudi, do you really not recognize me?" He directly told Xian Yuan Wudi about what had happened back then. Hearing this, Xian Yuan Wudi was stunned. Immediately after, his expression greatly changed as he looked at Chen Ling. You're Xian Yuan Ling. You're not dead?" After finally recognizing Chen Ling's identity, the shock in Xian Yuan Wudi's heart could not be any greater. How is this possible? A person who had been dead for so many years actually appeared in front of him again and recognized Chen Ling's identity. At the same time, Xian Yuan Wudi also discovered that Chen Ling's appearance was exactly the same as Xian Yuan Ling's when he was young. The face that was deep in Xian Yuan Wudi's memory had once again appeared in front of Xian Yuan Wudi at this moment. Request collection, request monthly votes, request recommendation. Chapter 1497. Chunling's words immediately made Xian Yuan Wudi recognize his identity. Chunling was really Xian Yuan Ling back then. He could also be said to be Xian Yuan Wudi's best friend. Back then, Xian Yuan Wudi had not yet broken through to the Great Sage realm. Like Xian Yuan Ling, he was one of the 3 clan elders of the Xian Yuan clan. At that time, the head of the Xian Yuan clan was still Xian Yuan Songtao. Xian Yuan Wudi and Xian Yuan Ling were the juniors cultivated by Xian Yuan Songtao. They could be said to be the most prominent figures in the Xian Yuan clan. As the 3 clan elders, they had a good relationship. Xian Yuan Wudi and Chunling would often train together at that time. Xian Yuan Wudi thought that the two would be brothers for life, but unfortunately, everything changed because of that incident. Under the temptation of the treasure, Xian Yuan Wudi killed Chunling and killed Xia Qingchen. Chunling's eyes were full of undisguised hatred. He looked at Xian Yuan Wudi coldly and said in a cold voice, "Why? Do you remember now? How is it possible? Haven't you been by the Dragon Emperor?" Xian Yuan Wudi looked at Chunling in shock and stuttered. This matter had always been buried deep in Xian Yuan Wudi's heart. He thought that the matter was over, but who would have thought that Chunling was standing in front of him again at this time? Perhaps it was because Chunling held a great weight in Xian Yuan Wudi's heart, or perhaps it was because Chunling once gave Xian Yuan Wudi too much pressure. Therefore, even though Chunling was now reborn and his cultivation was only at the Great Sage Great Mastery, Xian Yuan Wudi still couldn't control his emotions when he knew about Chunling. All those years ago, Chunling surpassed Xian Yuan Wudi in practically everything, be it cultivation, combat strength, or natural talent. Chunling was always superior to Xian Yuan Wudi. It was exactly because of this that Chunling was the #1 genius in the Xian Yuan clan, whereas Xian Yuan Wudi could only settle for the second position. Xian Yuan Wudi looked at Chunling in shock and said. Hearing this, Chunling sneered and said, "Surprised? That's right, I was indeed killed by the Dragon Emperor back then. However, fate plays tricks on people. I was reborn in the North Star realm. Rebirth, retaining the memories of the previous life." Hearing this, Xian Yuan Wudi was stunned. Although this sounded ridiculous, at Xian Yuan Wudi's level, he knew that it was not impossible. Of course, rebirth was not something that could be forced. It could only be left to fate. He never thought that Chunling would have such a fortuitous encounter. But very quickly, Xian Yuan Wudi came back to his senses, and the shock and fear in his eyes quickly disappeared. What replaced it was madness, savagery, and dense hatred. Xian Yuan Wudi roared angrily as he looked at Chunling with bloodshot eyes. "Back then, I ambushed Qingsheng." Xian Yuan Ling, do you still remember which one of us wanted to know Qingsheng? Since we were young, you have always been better than me in everything. Cultivation, combat strength, talent, and even the love of my uncle. You are better than me in everything. It seems that there's only a slight difference, but in front of you, I am always like a shadow. Do you know that since we were young, the first person that people think of when they talk about the Xian Yuan clan is Xian Yuan Ling? But what about me, Xian Yuan Wudi? Just like your shadow, I can only hide in a dark corner forever. As for you, it's like you're giving alms, giving me some of your glory as if I'm a beggar. Everyone thinks that you are good to me, like a brother. However, who knows that not only did you steal everything from me, you even stole Qingsheng in the end. Xian Yuan Ling, I hate you. I have hated you since the beginning. I hate that the Xian Yuan clan has me, Xian Yuan Wudi, and you, Xian Yuan Ling, Xian Yuan Wudi, roared angrily. As the great sage, no one had ever seen Xian Yuan Wudi lose his composure like this. Seeing Chunling, Xian Yuan Wudi recalled the past. At this moment, he could no longer control his emotions. Xian Yuan Wudi wasn't lying. Chunling had been suppressing Xian Yuan Wudi in every aspect since they were young. Of course, this wasn't Chunling's intention. on the contrary, Chun-Ling had been taking care of Xin Yuan Wudi. However, this care did not move Xin Yuan Wudi. It even made him angry because he felt that Chun-Ling was just giving him charity. The thing that Xin Yuan Wudi could not accept the most was Xia Qingsheng. Back then, Xia Qingsheng was one of the 3 great elders of the Haotian Alliance. Xin Yuan Wudi met Xia Qingsheng when he went to the Haotian Alliance. At first sight, Xin Yuan Wudi fell in love with Xia Qingsheng and took the initiative to get close to her. However, who would have thought that after the 3 of them became familiar with each other, Xia Qingsheng would choose Chun-Ling and not Xin Yuan Wudi? He was the one who met Xia Qingsheng first. However, Chun-Ling interfered and escaped from Xin Yuan Wudi. This was the thing that Xin Yuan Wudi could not accept the most. Therefore, from then on, Xin Yuan Wudi became extremely selfish, which led to the things that happened later. Hearing Xin Yuan Wudi's roar, Chun-Ling's expression did not change much. He only sighed and said, "Xin Yuan Wudi, it's not that I took Qingsheng away. It's just that Qingsheng never liked you. Moreover, do you still remember what happened in the Spirit Wind City?" Spirit Wind City? Hearing this, Xin Yuan Wudi's expression changed. Seeing this, Chun-Ling sneered. "Looks like you haven't forgotten. Back then, in the Spirit Wind City, you drugged Qingsheng. In the end, Qingsheng was taken away by a black-clothed man. Do you know that the black-clothed man was me?" Back then, Xin Yuan Wudi invited Xia Qingsheng to travel the human territory. Along the way, Xin Yuan Wudi pursued Xia Qingsheng. However, Xia Qingsheng did not agree. After countless failed attempts, when the 2 of them arrived at the Spirit Wind City, Xin Yuan Wudi lost his patience and was ready to take a risk. He thought that since it was difficult to move Xia Qingsheng's heart, he would get her body first. Therefore, in the Spirit Wind City, Xin Yuan Wudi drugged Xia Qingsheng and was ready to take her body by force. However, at the critical moment, a black-clothed man suddenly appeared and took Xia Qingsheng away. At that time, Chun-Ling did not have feelings for Xia Qingsheng. She never knew that the black-clothed man was Chun-Ling. Furthermore, Chun-Ling never told Xin Yuan Wudi about what happened back then, nor did he blame him. This was because in Chun-Ling's heart, Xin Yuan Wudi was still his brother. Although there were some flaws in his character, Chun-Ling believed that one day, Xin Yuan Wudi would be able to change. Because of this, not only did Chun-Ling not blame Xin Yuan Wudi, he even prevented Xia Qingsheng from causing trouble for Xin Yuan Wudi. "It's you." Xin Yuan Wudi stared at Chun-Ling in shock. Seeing Xin Yuan Wudi's gaze, Chun-Ling's eyes flashed with regret. "Yes, it's me. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me." Chapter 1498. A hint of regret flashed in his eyes. In fact, Chun-Ling knew that Xin Yuan Wudi was jealous of him from the beginning. Moreover, this jealousy grew stronger as he grew older. In the end, it almost became Xin Yuan Wudi's obsession, causing his character to become distorted. Ever since he was young, Xin Yuan Wudi wanted to compete with Chun-Ling in everything. However, he was crushed by Chun-Ling every time without exception. As for Chun-Ling, he actually had no intention of suppressing Xin Yuan Wudi at all. With Chun-Ling's character, he did not care much about reputation. If Xin Yuan Wudi were to surpass him in everything, Chun-Ling would not be jealous at all. He would only feel happy for him. He once thought that he could use his sincerity to change Xin Yuan Wudi's mind. Unfortunately, Chun-Ling did not succeed in the end. Instead, it caused a disaster and even harmed Xin Yuan Songtao in the end. Chun-Ling said coldly as he looked at Xin Yuan Wudi. Regret flashed past his eyes. "If I knew this would happen, I would not have kept you alive back then. I would have crippled you." He regretted being too soft-hearted back then. That was why Xia Qingsheng died and Xin Yuan Songtao was harmed. He still remembered what Xia Qingsheng had said before. Xin Yuan Wudi is vicious and selfish. Keeping him alive would not benefit the Xin Yuan clan. That was what Xia Qingsheng had said to Chun-Ling back then. She wanted to persuade Chun-Ling to kill or at least cripple Xin Yuan Wudi. Unfortunately, not only did Chun-Ling not accept Xia Qingsheng's words, He even scolded Xia Qingqing fiercely. Xin Yuan Wudi is my brother. I don't want to hear such words in the future. Back then, everyone had seen how much Chun Ling had taken care of Xin Yuan Wudi. It was a pity that the farmer and the snake could not warm up the heart. No matter how hard one tried, it would always be cold and could not be changed. Hearing Chun Ling's words, Xin Yuan Wudi came back to his senses and smiled coldly. What's the point of saying this now? Xin Yuan Ling, you have indeed surprised me. After so many years, you actually have the chance to stand in front of me again. But so what? You wouldn't be a match for me even if you were at your peak. Moreover, you're only at the sage great perfection realm now. You're no different from an ant in front of me now. Xin Yuan Ling, since you were lucky enough to be reborn, you shouldn't appear in front of me again. You shouldn't care about Xin Yuan Songtao. Everything is already destined. Do you think you can change anything? You've been like this since the beginning, always thinking that you're infallible. Today, it seems that I can make up for the regret in my heart and personally send you on your way. Everything that had happened in the past was no longer clear. No matter who was right or wrong, no matter who let down who, it was no longer important. After so many years, Chun Ling was reborn, and Xin Yuan Wudi had become the patriarch of the Xin Yuan clan, one of the great sage of the human race. Things changed with the passage of time. Chun Ling was no longer the Xin Yuan Ling who could suppress Xin Yuan Wudi in everything. At this time, in the eyes of Xin Yuan Wudi, Chun Ling was just an ant that could be crushed at will. The excitement in his heart slowly calmed down. He admitted that because he suddenly saw Chun Ling, Xin Yuan Wudi's heart was fluctuating greatly. But so what? The former Xin Yuan Ling was already dead, and the current Chun Ling was not his opponent at all. The killing intent in his eyes began to gather continuously again. Xin Yuan Wudi looked at Chun Ling and said coldly, Xin Yuan Ling, you didn't take the path to heaven, but you barged into hell. Since you're courting death, then don't blame me. I could kill you once in the past. Today, I can kill you for the second time. As Xin Yuan Wudi said, he directly shot out a palm. It was a casual palm without using the slightest martial skill. However, with Xin Yuan Wudi's cultivation of great sage, great perfection, even if it was just a casual blow, it was not something that Chun Ling could resist at this time. A monstrous aura instantly locked onto Chun Ling, making his body unable to move at all. He could only watch Xin Yuan Wudi's palm print fall. The cultivation gap was too big. Just the aura alone was not something that Chun Ling could contend with. Seeing Xin Yuan Wudi's palm strike fiercely pressing down on him, Chun Ling's eyes did not have the slightest trace of fear. Even the hatred he had when he saw Xin Yuan Wudi earlier had completely disappeared, replaced by calmness, like an ancient well without ripples. Looking calmly at Xin Yuan Wudi's palm print falling, Chun Ling secretly said in his heart, Qing Cheng, maybe I'm really too soft-hearted. Until now, I still regard Wudi as my own brother. Chun Ling and Xin Yuan Wudi were not biological brothers, but their fathers were biological brothers, which was Xin Yuan Songtao's biological younger brother. Chun Ling and Xin Yuan Wudi's fathers were biological brothers with Xin Yuan Songtao. However, because of a battle with the Ghost Clan, their fathers died in battle. Then, Xin Yuan Songtao became their father and raised them. Therefore, since they were young, Chun Ling and Xin Yuan Wudi could be said to have grown up together. Their relationship was no different from that of biological brothers. Chun Ling still remembered that when Xin Yuan Wudi was a child, although he was called Wudi, he was very timid. Because of the loss of his father, Xin Yuan Wudi was a little inferior when he was young. At that time, other clansmen of the Xin Yuan clan bullied him. Xin Yuan Wudi did not dare to fight back. Every time, it was Chun Ling who stood up for him to seek justice. At that time, Xin Yuan Wudi might have a little jealousy of Chun Ling. There was only a strong brotherly love. He relied on Chun Ling as a big brother. At the moment of his death, Chun Ling's heart was not filled with hatred. He could not help but think of his childhood. He unconsciously looked at Xin Yuan Wudi, and a faint smile appeared on his face. Wudi. It was a simple word, but when he heard this, Xianyuan Wudi's movements paused, and a trace of hesitation flashed across his face. In this world, there were only two people who would call Xianyuan Wudi that. One was Xianyuan Songtao, and the other was Chunling. Xianyuan Songtao was Xianyuan Wudi's uncle and also his father. Chunling was his big brother, but now both of them had died at his hands. Although Xianyuan Songtao was not dead, after so many years, what was the difference between him and being dead? Although he was conflicted, Xianyuan Wudi quickly shouted with a ferocious expression, "Xianyuan Ling die?" In the end, Xianyuan Wudi still did not hold back. Just as the palm strike was about to reach Chun Ling, just as Chun Ling himself thought that he was about to die, the void was suddenly torn open. Then, Xing Zhantian's figure shot out explosively, instantly appearing in front of Chun Ling. He also struck out with a palm strike, fiercely colliding with Xianyuan Wudi's palm strike, blocking it for Chun Ling. Please add this to your collection. Monthly vote, recommend this. Chapter 1499. Xing Zhantian's sudden appearance caused Xianyuan Wudi's expression to change. He originally thought that he could kill Chun Ling with a single palm strike, but who would have thought that Xing Zhantian would step forward at the last moment? Both of them had the same cultivation and battle prowess. Therefore, Xing Zhantian was able to block Xianyuan Wudi's casual attack with ease. Their palms collided fiercely, and a terrifying shockwave spread out. Chun Ling was protected by Xing Zhantian, so he was not affected by the shockwave. After a while, the terrifying shockwave slowly disappeared. Xing Zhantian looked at Xianyuan Wudi indifferently and said, "Xianyuan Wudi, as the great sage, don't you think it's a little too degrading to attack a junior? Moreover, have you forgotten that Chun Ling is a holy son of the holy rankings? Do you want to die with him?" Chun Ling was a holy son of the holy rankings. Hearing this, Xianyuan Wudi's eyes flashed with endless hatred. Previously, because of his impulsiveness and exposure, Xianyuan Wudi had almost forgotten that Chun Ling was a holy son of the holy rankings. It could be said that Xing Zhantian's appearance not only saved Chun Ling, but also saved Xianyuan Wudi. Just like before, if Xianyuan Wudi's palm strike had succeeded in killing Chun Ling, there was no doubt that Xianyuan Wudi would have died with him. Hearing Xing Zhantian's words, the hatred in Xianyuan Wudi's eyes did not diminish, but there was also a hint of relief. On the other hand, Chun Ling, who was behind Xing Zhantian, had a hint of disappointment in his eyes. Chun Ling naturally knew that he was a holy son of the holy rankings. He also knew what would happen if Xianyuan Wudi killed him, but that was actually what Chun Ling was thinking. In Chun Ling's opinion, he did not have the ability to kill Xianyuan Wudi with his own hands. Even if he did, Chun Ling would not be able to do it. As such, it would be better for the two of them to die together. Let Xianyuan Wudi kill him, and then the heavenly way would send down divine punishment to kill Xianyuan Wudi. This might be the best outcome for Chun Ling, and also the best outcome for Xianyuan Wudi. Unfortunately, this thought was completely shattered by the appearance of Xing Zhantian. Xianyuan Wudi had already regained his senses. Xianyuan Wudi looked coldly at Chun Ling. He felt a lingering fear in his heart. At the same time, he suddenly remembered that although Chun Ling's cultivation was only at the sage great perfection realm, and he was nothing more than an ant in his eyes, he was still Xianyuan Ling. Back then, Xianyuan Ling not only had extremely high innate talent and combat strength, but his wisdom was also extremely heaven-defying. Things have already come to this point, and you still want to scheme against me. Xianyuan Wudi thought coldly and felt a lingering fear. Just as Xianyuan Wudi was feeling a lingering fear and Chun Ling was feeling disappointed, Xiao Chun appeared beside Chun Ling. Xing Zhantian was naturally called over by Xiao Chun. Because he was afraid that Chun Ling would be in danger, Xiao Chun immediately called for Xing Zhantian to rush over. Now it seemed that he had arrived in time. However, in response to Xiao Chun's arrival, Chun Ling said indifferently, "Third brother, You shouldn't have come. For some things, it's best to end things here. Hearing Chunling's words, Xiaochun immediately understood what Chunling meant. It seemed that Chunling wanted to perish together with Xianyuan Wudi. Without much of a change in expression, Xiaochun looked at Chunling and said, "You know that I won't let anything happen to you." Chunling wanted to perish together with Xianyuan Wudi. How could Xiaochun agree? In any case, Xiaochun couldn't let Chunling sacrifice his own life to perish together with Xianyuan Wudi. Chunling knew what Xiaochun meant and understood Chunling's feelings for him. However, at this time, Chunling helplessly smiled bitterly and said, "Perhaps some things can only be truly resolved when you die. I don't care about that. Since we're brothers, I can't just watch as something happens to you." Xiaochun replied. The two spoke softly. Hearing the conversation between Xiaochun and Chunling, Xingzhan Tian felt a little strange. From Chunling's words, it seemed that he was very familiar with Xianyuan Wudi. However, this was impossible. Xianyuan Wudi was from the same generation as Xingzhan Tian. He was much older than Chunling. At that age, he was probably old enough to be Chunling's ancestor. He couldn't understand it all. It was impossible for Chunling and Xianyuan Wudi to have any interactions. However, from Chunling's tone, it seemed that he had known Xianyuan Wudi for a long time. Xingzhan Tian was puzzled. At this time, Xianyuan Wudi only had eyes for Chunling. With Xingzhan Tian's arrival, Xianyuan Wudi didn't know if Chunling would expose Xianyuan Songtao's matter. No, it should be said that Chunling would expose Xianyuan Songtao's matter. Then, Chunling would completely expose Xianyuan Wudi's true identity. Xianyuan Wudi would no longer have a place in the human race. At that time, not only would the Yin-Yang sect and the Haotian alliance look down on him, but the Xianyuan clan would also view him as a disgrace. At that time, Xianyuan Wudi would have no other choice but to betray the human race. Of course, with Xianyuan Wudi's strength, it wasn't impossible for him to slaughter the entire Xianyuan clan. But so what? At that time, Xianyuan Wudi would still be alone, deserted by his friends and family. Suddenly, a smile appeared on Xianyuan Wudi's face. However, no matter how one looked at it, this smile seemed bleak and lifeless. With a bleak smile, Xianyuan Wudi looked at Chunling and said, "You've won again. You must be very proud now. You can finally kill me." With Xingzhan Tian here, it would be very difficult for Xianyuan Wudi to kill Chunling. However, Chunling only needed to say a single word to destroy Xianyuan Wudi's reputation. A loss was still a loss. Xianyuan Wudi had been competitive all his life. He had chased after Chunling all his life. He had even used all sorts of methods to become stronger and surpass Chunling. However, in the end, Xianyuan Wudi was still one step behind. Of course, this loss wasn't because of Chunling. It was because of the will of the heavens. Having given up on struggling, Xianyuan Wudi looked at Chunling. At the same time, Chunling looked at Xianyuan Wudi. After a while, Chunling did something that Xianyuan Wudi had never expected. Chunling turned to Xiaochun and said indifferently, "Third brother, let's go." Having said that, Chunling carried the ice coffin and tore through the void to leave. Upon seeing this, Xiaochun hurriedly followed. He didn't expect Chunling to not say anything. Looking at Chunling's back, Xianyuan Wudi was stunned. However, his eyes turned blood red in an instant. He looked in the direction where Chunling left and saw a spatial crack that was slowly closing up. Not only that, but he could also vaguely see Chunling carrying the ice coffin on his back. Staring at Chunling's back, Xianyuan Wudi completely forgot that Xingzhan Tian was beside him. He angrily roared, "Are you pitying me? I don't need your pity." Xianyuan Wudi's angry roar sounded, but Chunling ignored it and didn't even turn his head. Seeing this, two streams of tears flowed down from Xianyuan Wudi's eyes. He was like a child who had been wronged. "Xianyuan Ling, stop right there. I don't need your pity. I don't need. Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me." Chapter 1500. Chunling didn't say a word and left with Xiaochun. Xianyuan Wudi roared madly. He knew that Chun-Ling could completely ruin his reputation, but he didn't do so in the end. This made Xian Yuan Wudi very uncomfortable, as if Chun-Ling was giving him charity. Xian Yuan Wudi was a very proud person. There was no doubt about that. Therefore, he thought that Chun-Ling was giving him charity and pitying him. From Xian Yuan Wudi's point of view, Chun-Ling had always been like this. In front of Chun-Ling, Xian Yuan Wudi's brilliance would be overshadowed. In the end, Chun-Ling would pity him and give him charity. This was something that Xian Yuan Wudi couldn't accept. However, did Chun-Ling really have the intention of giving charity to Xian Yuan Wudi? Obviously not. The reason why he didn't choose to tell Xian Yuan Songtao was actually because Chun-Ling's heart softened. Although he hated Xian Yuan Wudi, in his heart, Xian Yuan Wudi was still his younger brother. Especially when Xian Yuan Wudi attacked, just now. Before Chun-Ling's death, scenes of their childhood appeared in his mind. It was really difficult for Chun-Ling to kill Xian Yuan Wudi. Since young, Chun-Ling and Xian Yuan Wudi had both lost their father. Both of them stepped onto the path of martial arts under the guidance of Xian Yuan Songtao. However, Xian Yuan Songtao, who was still the patriarch of the Xian Yuan clan, naturally didn't have too much time to accompany them. Therefore, both of them spent their childhood accompanying each other. To Xian Yuan Wudi, Chun-Ling was both a brother and a father. On the contrary, in Chun-Ling's eyes, Xian Yuan Wudi was like a child who didn't grow up. Xian Yuan Wudi loved to fight and compete. After so many years, Xian Yuan Wudi still hadn't changed. He was now the patriarch of the Xian Yuan clan, the great sage, but in Chun-Ling's eyes he was still like a child. In the void, Xian Yuan Wudi roared angrily, but tears flowed from his eyes. At the side, Xing Zhantian's expression became very interesting. Just now, what did Xian Yuan Wudi say? Xian Yuan Ling. Xing Zhantian naturally knew Xian Yuan Ling's name because he and Xian Yuan Ling were of the same generation. Back then, when Xian Yuan Ling was still alive, he was one of the 3 elders of the Xian Yuan clan, and Xing Zhantian was also one of the 3 elders of the Haotian Alliance. Xing Zhantian stared at Xian Yuan Wudi in astonishment and said in a deep voice, "Xian Yuan Wudi, what did you say?" Xing Zhantian was also a great sage emperor, so he had also guessed something in his heart. Although reincarnation was bizarre for Xing Zhantian, it was not an unacceptable fact. Facing Zzzz was S, who's completely, and Chin's S's was S. In fact, perhaps even Xian Yuan Wudi didn't know how important Chun-Ling was to him. Xian Yuan Wudi only knew that back then, when he heard the news of Chun-Ling being killed by the Dragon Emperor. Although Xian Yuan Wudi was happy, he was more sorrowful. He clearly hoped that Chun-Ling would die because that way, Xian Yuan Wudi wouldn't be suppressed by Chun-Ling anymore and wouldn't have to live under Chun-Ling's radiance. It was a pity that Chun-Ling was indeed dead. However, Xian Yuan Wudi didn't feel any joy of victory at all. It was as though his heart had been hollowed out. His heart was empty. So from then on, Xian Yuan Wudi sealed his heart completely. He thought that time would slowly heal everything about Chun-Ling, but it was a pity that it didn't happen. It wasn't until he met Chun-Ling again that Xian Yuan Wudi realized that he couldn't ask Chun-Ling for help. Or perhaps, he didn't only hate Chun-Ling, but also their brotherly relationship. It was as if he had lost his soul. Seeing Xian Yuan Wudi in such a state, Xing Zhantian let out a soft sigh. Then, without saying anything more, he moved and chased after Chun-Ling and Xiao Chun. With Xing Zhantian's speed, he naturally caught up with the two of them very quickly. Looking at Chun-Ling in front of him, Xing Zhantian said with a complicated expression, "I thought you were dead." It wasn't the first time he met Chun-Ling previously. Xing Zhantian didn't know Chun-Ling's identity. Now that he had guessed it, Xing Zhantian naturally had a myriad of emotions in his heart. Although Xing Zhantian and Chun-Ling didn't have much interaction, the two of them still had a lot of contact back then. After all, at that time, they were both hailed as the most promising people in their respective forces to break through to the Great Sage realm. They could be said to be competitors. Unfortunately, the result was Chun-Ling's background, while Xing Zhantian became the leader of the Haotian Alliance and broke through to the Great Sage realm. Hearing Xing Zhantian's words, Chunling no longer had the intention to hide it. He helplessly smiled bitterly and said, "I did die, but I came back to life." Chunling's words undoubtedly admitted his identity. Seeing this, Xing Zhantian sighed softly and said, "Many years have passed. I didn't expect you and I would meet again." After the news of Chunling's death spread out, Xing Zhantian sighed. In his opinion, a person like Chunling shouldn't have fallen. With his talent, stepping into the great sage realm was a sure thing. Unfortunately, the will of the heavens played tricks on people. Seeing Xing Zhantian sigh, Chunling smiled and said, "Let's return to Haotian City first." Xing Zhantian's timely arrival saved Chunling's life, but things weren't over yet. Chunling still needed to open the ice coffin. However, Chunling didn't tell Xing Zhantian about the ice coffin, and Xing Zhantian had no intention of asking. He didn't even see what was in the ice coffin. He had covered the ice coffin with a piece of black cloth, so Xing Zhantian couldn't see Xianyuan's Songtao in the ice coffin. On the way back to Haotian City, Xing Zhantian didn't stay for long and left directly. Although he had a lot to say to Chunling when he saw him again, he could see that Chunling still had things to deal with, so Xing Zhantian didn't want to continue disturbing him. After Xing Zhantian left, Chunling and Xiao Chun came to the courtyard. They only notified Qin Shu and the other two women, and didn't alert anyone else. Then, the two of them came to the study. At this time, Chunling lifted the black cloth on the ice coffin, and Xiao Chun saw Xianyuan's Songtao lying in the ice coffin. Seeing this, Xiao Chun asked curiously, "Who is this?" Hearing this, Chunling looked coldly at Xianyuan's Songtao in the ice coffin and said, "My and Xianyuan Wudi's uncle, the previous patriarch of the Xianyuan clan. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation." Chapter 1501. The previous patriarch of the Xianyuan clan? Chunling and Xianyuan Wudi's uncle? Xiao Chan was slightly stunned when he heard this. Chunling smiled bitterly. "I never thought that I would be able to see my uncle again in this lifetime." Chunling was touched, but Xiao Chen didn't know what to say. However, Chunling took the initiative to tell Xiao Chen about Xianyuan Songtao, including how Xianyuan Songtao became like this. Xiao Chen's eyes flashed with surprise when he heard Chunling's words. "Then why did you let Xianyuan Wudi go?" He never thought that Xianyuan Songtao was harmed by Xianyuan Wudi. As such, Xiao Chun didn't think too much about it, and immediately replied. With the relationship between Xiao Chun and Chunling, they naturally didn't need to think too much when they spoke. Moreover, Xiao Chun couldn't understand why Chunling didn't say a word when Chunling had a way to ruin Xianyuan Wudi's reputation. He even covered the ice coffin with a black cloth. Now, Chunling only needed to announce Xianyuan Songtao's matter, and Xianyuan Wudi would be finished. So what if he was the great sage? There would definitely be countless people in the Xianyuan clan who wouldn't accept him. At that time, Xianyuan Wudi would be alone. Xiao Chen's words carried a hint of blame. Chunling smiled and said, "He's my younger brother after all, just like you." "Younger brother?" "Big brother. He's the one who wants to kill you." Xiao Chun retorted mercilessly. Xianyuan Wudi had indeed wanted to kill Chunling. If Xiao Chun and Xing Zhantian hadn't arrived in time, the two of them would have perished together. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Chunling smiled bitterly and helplessly. "Third brother, I know and understand what you mean. However, there are some things that are completely different from what you imagine when you really have to do it yourself. I once thought of killing Xianyuan Wudi personally for revenge, but when it came to meeting him, I couldn't do it no matter what. It's like if I wanted to kill you. Third brother, would you be able to kill me?" If one day Chunling and Xiao Chun had a falling out, and Chunling wanted to kill Xiao Chun, what would Xiao Chun do at that time? Should he kill Chunling mercilessly, or should he be like Chunling, soft-hearted and unable to kill him? Xiao Chun did not know how to answer Chunling's question because he had never thought that there would be a day when he and Chunling would become enemies. Seeing Xiao Chen's silence, Chunling smiled helplessly. Some things are easier said than done, especially between brothers. How can it be broken so easily? Chunling couldn't bear to kill Xianyuan Wudi. Even though he had a way to destroy Xianyuan Wudi's reputation, Chunling couldn't bring himself to do it. Hearing Chunling's words, Xiao Chun was silent for a while. Finally, he sighed and said, "Big brother, do you think there will be a day when we become enemies?" Because of Chunling's question, Xiao Chun tried to think about it. If there was a day when he and Chunling became enemies because of some things, what would happen then? He didn't dare to imagine. Or rather, Xiao Chun himself didn't have an answer. Hearing Xiao Chun's question, Chunling smiled and said, "No, you're different from Wudi." As he spoke, Chunling slowly walked to the window. At this time, the sun was slowly rising. Looking at the rising sun, Chunling seemed to be answering Xiao Chun's question, but also seemed to be talking to himself. Wudi has been chasing after me since he was young. I knew this from the beginning. Originally, I thought this was good, at least it gave Wudi a goal. After all, at that time, he and I had just lost our father. But who would have thought that in the end, this chasing gradually turned into jealousy and hatred? Wudi hated me. He hated me for taking away everything that should have belonged to him. But he didn't know that this wasn't my intention. If he wanted it, I would have given it all to him without hesitation. Status, fame, power, I could have given it all to him. Unfortunately, it was too late. Wudi was like a child. He wanted to be strong, but he was also very childish. He was very naive, but he was also very jealous. He was very emotional, but he was also very impulsive. All this time, Wudi was like a follower behind me. But third brother, you're different. You're not the same as Wudi. Your talent is outstanding, even above mine. You and I have gone through many twists and turns. Along the way, there's nothing that we can't share. So, you'll never become Wudi. Chunling and Xiao Chun would never become like Xianyuan Ling and Xianyuan Wudi. Hearing this, Xiao Chun smiled and said, "All right, anyway, I can't win against Big Brother. Who asked you to live two lives? In short, no matter what decision you make, I'll support you. However, if Xianyuan Wudi still wants to kill you, next time, even if Big Brother doesn't do it, I won't let him off easily." As brothers, how could they reason clearly? Perhaps if this matter happened to Xiao Chun would definitely kill Xianyuan Wudi without hesitation. However, Chunling's heart softened. Thus, Xiao Chun could only choose to support him. Just like Xiao Chun said, no matter what decision Chunling made, Xiao Chun would support him. Hearing Xiao Chun's words, Chunling smiled and then shifted his gaze to the ice coffin. Seeing this, Xiao Chun also came to Chunling's side and looked at Xianyuan Songtao, who was lying quietly in the ice coffin. Is he still alive? Perhaps he used a secret technique to seal his consciousness and entered a state of suspended animation. Hearing this, Chunling replied indifferently. In fact, all these years, Xianyuan Songtao had been sleeping in the ice coffin. It wasn't completely without benefits, because he had been in such a state. In fact, after so many years, Xianyuan Songtao's life force had been very little. This was actually the biggest benefit. It wasn't difficult to wake Xianyuan Songtao up. He only needed to open the ice coffin and then use his own spiritual energy to undo the seal on Xianyuan Songtao's consciousness. At that time, Xianyuan Songtao would be able to wake up. The storage ring in his hand flashed, and then a round jade tablet appeared in Chunling's hand. This jade tablet was like a piece of ice, transparent and pure. This was the key to this hotel, and it was also the thing that Xianyuan Wudi had been painstakingly looking for. In Clear Sky City, Chunling was temporarily safe, so at this time, he let down his guard. Looking at Xianyuan Songtao in the ice coffin, Chunling slowly said, "Uncle, I came late and caused you to suffer. I'm unfilial." As he spoke, Chunling directly pressed the jade tablet on the surface of the ice coffin. As the jade tablet and the ice coffin came into contact, suddenly a light blue light slowly lit up from the jade tablet. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. Chapter 1502. When the jade token came into contact with the ice coffin, a pale blue light slowly radiated from the jade token. Then, a shocking scene appeared. The jade token seemed to melt, and it slowly merged into the ice coffin. At the same time, as the jade token melted, the ice coffin slowly opened. First, a small gap appeared. However, as soon as the gap appeared, an extremely cold air instantly rushed towards them. This cold air made Xiao Chun and Chun Ling feel extremely cold. The two of them were very strong. If it were other ordinary saints, they would have been frozen by this cold air. Feeling the bone-piercing cold, Xiao Chun and Chun Ling both circulated the spiritual energy in their bodies to resist. The ice coffin continued to open. After about 10 breaths, the ice coffin was completely opened, and Xianyuan Songtao appeared in front of Chun Ling. While resisting the extreme cold air, he looked at Xianyuan Songtao, who was lying peacefully in the ice coffin. His white hair, coupled with his skin that was as soft as a baby's, made Xianyuan Songtao look extremely extraordinary. Of course, the only flaw was that Xianyuan Songtao's face was completely pale. This was not strange. After all, after sleeping for so many years, Xianyuan Songtao's blood had already stopped flowing. It was also because Xianyuan Songtao had the cultivation of the great saint realm. If it was someone else, they would have already died. There was no heartbeat, no breathing, just like a dead person. After waiting for the cold air to dissipate, Chun Ling and Xiao Chun moved together and carried Xianyuan Songtao out of the ice coffin. Now that the ice coffin had been opened, the next step was to wake Xianyuan Songtao up. This step was not difficult for Chun Ling. He only needed to use his spiritual energy to break the seal in Xianyuan Songtao's saint soul to wake Xianyuan Songtao up. After carrying Xianyuan Songtao to a chair, Xiao Chun supported Xianyuan Songtao's body, while Chun Ling pointed a finger at Xianyuan Songtao's forehead. Then, spiritual energy entered Xianyuan Songtao's body through his forehead and quickly broke the seal in his saint soul. It did not take much effort to break through the seal. Then, Chun Ling and Xiao Chun waited for Xianyuan Songtao's attributes. Gradually, color began to return to Xianyuan Songtao's face, and his heart began to beat slowly. Around 1 jaw stick's worth of time later, Xianyuan Songtao opened his eyes. In the beginning, there was no emotion in his eyes. Perhaps it was because he had been asleep for too long, but Xianyuan Songtao found it difficult to adapt. As time passed, Xianyuan Songtao's consciousness completely awakened. When he saw Chun Ling standing in front of him, a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. Xianyuan Songtao said with some difficulty, "You are." He didn't recognize Chun Ling. After all, Chun Ling had already died once. Hearing Xianyuan Songtao's words, Chun Ling smiled and said, "Uncle, I'm late." "Eldest uncle?" Xianyuan Songtao was taken aback. Then, he began to carefully size up Chun Ling. After a long while, Xianyuan Songtao said excitedly, "Linger, your Ling uncle, it's me." Chun Ling nodded and replied. Seeing that Xianyuan Songtao had woken up safely, Chun Ling was naturally happy. On the other hand, Xianyuan Songtao was even more excited to see Chun Ling. As he had been asleep for too long, Xianyuan Songtao's body was still very weak. He couldn't unleash his strength at all. He still needed to recuperate for a period of time before he could fully recover. However, this didn't stop Xianyuan Songtao from feeling excited. Back then, when Xianyuan Ling died, Xianyuan Songtao was so furious that he almost went to the dragon race to fight the Dragon Emperor. Extremely emotional, Xianyuan Songtao held Chun Ling's hand and said tearfully, "Linger, it's great that you're not dead. It's great that you're fine. It's great that you're fine." Chun Ling's death back then was a huge blow to Xianyuan Songtao. It was easy to imagine how Xianyuan Songtao felt now that he could see Chun Ling again. However, after hearing Xianyuan Songtao's words, Chun Ling chuckled and said, "Uncle, I'm actually someone who has died once." Hearing this, Xianyuan Songtao was puzzled. Then, Chun Ling told Xianyuan Songtao about what happened back then, how he was reborn, and everything that happened in the North Star boundary. After a full 2 hours, Chunling finally finished. After hearing these things, Xianyuan Songtao sighed and said, Linger, I didn't expect you to have such a fortuitous encounter. As he spoke, Xianyuan Songtao looked at Xiao Chun, who was sitting beside Chunling. A gentle smile flashed across his eyes. He already knew about Xiao Chun from Chunling. He also knew that the two of them came from the small heavenly Chun continent and went through a lot of hardships together. The relationship between the two of them was almost like that of brothers. Of course, Chunling also told Xianyuan Songtao about Longqing. He also knew that Chunling had a second sister who was the current princess of the Dragon Clan. The Dragon Emperor doted on her a lot. It could be said that he held her in his hands and was afraid that she would melt in his mouth. Looking at Xiao Chun with a gentle gaze, Xianyuan Songtao smiled and said, Xiao Chun, since you and Ling are brothers, you will be my family in the future. If you don't mind, you can call me uncle like Linger in the future. Xianyuan Songtao's words clearly approved of Chunling. Hearing this, Xiao Chun did not refuse. He stood up and bowed to Xianyuan Songtao and said, Nephew greets uncle. Good. Since today is the first time Chun and I have met, I will naturally give you a greeting gift. Do you like this ice coffin? Uncle will give it to you. Hearing this, Xianyuan Songtao smiled happily and said good 3 times. This ice coffin was definitely an extraordinary treasure. Even the great sage would not be able to destroy it. Hearing Xianyuan Songtao's words, Xiao Chun did not refuse and immediately nodded in agreement. Moreover, because there were no signs of life within the ice coffin, Xiao Chun easily put the ice coffin into his spatial ring. Previously, Chunling was unable to put the ice coffin into his spatial ring because Xianyuan Songtao was sleeping in the ice coffin. Now that Xianyuan Songtao was awake, the ice coffin could naturally be put into his spatial ring. After Xiao Chun put down the ice coffin, Xianyuan Songtao's expression changed slightly. He looked at Chunling with a complicated expression and said, Linger, you've already met Wudi? Since Chunling had saved him, he should have already met Xianyuan Wudi. Hearing this, Chunling nodded and said, I've met him, but I still can't bring myself to do it. Then, Chunling told Xianyuan Songtao about what had happened. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1503. After hearing Chunling's story, Xianyuan Songtao sighed and said, You were like this back then. Too soft-hearted. Xianyuan Songtao could not be more familiar with Chunling's personality. He could be decisive in killing outsiders, but to his own people, especially his family, it could be said that he was kind to his bones. It was precisely because he understood Chunling very well that Xianyuan Songtao was not surprised by Chunling's decision earlier. After all, this was Chunling. Xianyuan Songtao sighed and said to Chunling, Don't worry about Wudi. But Ling, since you're back, don't hide it anymore. Don't call yourself Chunling anymore. After all, Xianyuan Ling is your real name. Do you understand? Chunling's return put Xianyuan Songtao in a good mood. As for Xianyuan Wudi, Xianyuan Songtao did not know what to do. However, in Xianyuan Songtao's heart, since Chunling had returned, he shouldn't continue using the name Chunling. There was no need to hide his identity either, because with Xianyuan Songtao present, no one in the human race would be able to harm Dao Chunling again. Xianyuan Songtao wouldn't let what had happened in the past happen again. Chunling did not think too much about it. He nodded and said, I'll listen to uncle. Chunling, no, he should be called Xianyuan Ling, nodded. However, while the two of them were talking, Xiao Chen's expression changed. He looked at the door. Following Xiao Chen's gaze, Xingzhan Tian's voice came from outside. Brother Xianyuan, I came uninvited. Please don't take offense. Xingzhan Tian had come. In fact, Xingzhan Tian had also sensed a strange aura. He followed the aura and came here. Hearing Xingzhan Tian's words, Xiao Chen did not reply. Instead, he looked at Xianyuan Ling. Seeing this, Xianyuan Ling looked at Xianyuan Songtao. In the end, Xianyuan Songtao nodded slightly. Seeing Xianyuan Songtao nod, Xianyuan Ling stood up and opened the door. He said to Xingzhan Tian, "Please come in." After saying that, he stepped aside to make way for Xingzhan Tian. However, Xingzhan Tian did not move. Instead, he looked at Xianyuan Songtao, who was sitting on the main seat in the room. Looking at Xianyuan Songtao, Xingzhan Tian looked as if he had seen a ghost. As the great sage, Xingzhan Tian had actually lost his composure. One could only imagine how much shock Xianyuan Songtao's appearance had given him. Previously, it was Xianyuan Ling. Now it was Xianyuan Songtao. Xingzhan Tian couldn't help but feel a little depressed. What's going on with the Xianyuan clan? Why are people who have been dead for so many years coming back to life one after another? First, it was Xianyuan Ling. Xingzhan Tian had not recovered from the shock of Xianyuan Ling's appearance. But now he actually saw the previous head of the Xianyuan clan, Xianyuan Songtao, in Xianyuan Ling's room. It was as if he had seen a ghost. Facing Xianyuan Songtao, Xingzhan Tian felt as if he had been cursed. In the end, it was Xianyuan Ling who spoke. Xingzhan Tian came back to his senses and asked, "Leader Xing, what's wrong?" After hearing Xianyuan Ling's words, Xingzhan Tian came back to his senses. Then, he shook his head helplessly and said, "Brother Xianyuan, there's no need to be so polite between us. Let me, Zhan Tian. But your Xianyuan clan really makes me feel a little..." Xingzhan Tian originally wanted to surprise me, but when the words came to his mouth, he felt that it wasn't good to say it, so he didn't say it. After speaking with Xianyuan Ling, Xingzhan Tian stepped into the room and bowed to Xianyuan Songtao, who was sitting on the main seat. "Greetings, Senior Xianyuan." Yinyangzi, Xingzhan Tian, and Xianyuan Wudi were the great sage of the human race. According to seniority, Xingzhan Tian and Xianyuan Wudi were of the same generation, while Yinyangzi was of the same generation as Xianyuan Songtao. Therefore, when Xingzhan Tian saw Xianyuan Songtao, he addressed him as senior. As for the current situation of the human race and the war of the 100 races, Xianyuan Songtao had heard about it from Xianyuan Ling. He also knew that Xingzhan Tian was one of the 3 great sages of the human race. Facing Xingzhan Tian, Xianyuan Songtao said with a smile, "In the blink of an eye, so many years have passed. The prodigies of the past have all grown up. No need to be so polite to an old man like me." After so many years, Xingzhan Tian was no longer the young junior of the past. He had grown into the great sage. It could be said that the current Xingzhan Tian and Xianyuan Songtao could be treated as equals. After all, in the world of martial artists, although seniority was also important, strength was more important. After inviting Xingzhan Tian to take a seat, Xingzhan Tian cleverly did not delve into why Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling were still alive. After all, this was a private matter of the Xianyuan clan. If an outsider wanted to get to the bottom of it, it would be somewhat annoying. However, Xingzhan Tian soon became ecstatic after his initial shock that Xianyuan Songtao was still alive. This was because Xianyuan Songtao's existence was absolutely great news for the human race. Let's not talk about anything else. Let's talk about what it means to have the great sage during the War of the 100 Races. I think everyone knows this. Originally, the human race had 3 great saint emperors. However, with the addition of Xianyuan Songtao, the human race now had 4 great saint emperors. With one more great saint emperor, the human race's strength had improved greatly. However, Xingzhan Tian clearly did not know about Xianyuan Wudi, which was why he thought so. Xingzhan Tian did not expect Xianyuan Songtao to still be alive. While they were meeting in Haoyan City, Xianyuan Wudi, who was in the Xianyuan clan, did not return to the Xianyuan clan's manor. Instead, he went to a lake in the depths of Shoshan. The surface of the lake was not big. It was very small, and nobody could see it. Xianyuan Wudi was sitting under a tree by the lake, holding a flagon of wine in his hand. His eyes were full of confusion, and he only knew how to drink. Xianyuan Wudi's mood was very complicated when he saw Xian Yuan Ling again. At the same time, a thought that Xian Yuan Wudi did not dare to imagine appeared in his mind. Did I really do something wrong? Xian Yuan Wudi kept thinking about this question in his mind. Thinking back to his life, Xian Yuan Wudi actually had such a question about himself. Was it wrong? This was a question that Xian Yuan Wudi had never thought about before. But now, this question was constantly circling Xian Yuan Wudi's mind, making it impossible for him to ignore it. Please collect, please vote, please recommend me. Chapter 1504. His eyes were full of doubts. Xian Yuan Wudi's heart was in a mess, a complete mess. While drinking, he looked at the lake in front of him. The lake was in Xiaoshan, not far from the manor of the Xian Yuan clan. He remembered that when they were young, Xian Yuan Wudi and Xian Yuan Ling liked to play here. Because there was no one else here, the two brothers could play here unbridled. At that time, Xian Yuan Ling and Xian Yuan Wudi were not experts. They were just two children. In the clan, except for Xian Yuan Songtao, the other clansmen were not very friendly to them. At that time, they were not like now. Not only were they strong, but they also had boundless power, especially Xian Yuan Wudi. Compared with when he was young, Xian Yuan Wudi was now the great sage. At the same time, he was also the head of the Xian Yuan clan. No one could bully him like when he was young. But was Xian Yuan Wudi happy? No, especially after coming here. Xian Yuan Wudi only felt emptiness. He didn't know how many years it had been since he came to this lake. It seemed that Xian Yuan Wudi hadn't come here since Xian Yuan Ling died. He didn't want to come here, and he was afraid of coming here. Because every time he saw this lake, he would remember bits and pieces of him and Xian Yuan Ling and the scene of the two brothers playing here. At that time, although Xian Yuan Wudi was young and didn't have much power, he was very happy. Xian Yuan Ling always accompanied him and protected him. His eyes were a little blurred. He thought that he had forgotten the past, but in the end, he was deceiving himself. Drinking hard liquor, Xian Yuan Wudi didn't know whether what he had been doing was right or wrong. He didn't know whether this kind of life was what he wanted. Cultivation and power. Could Xian Yuan Wudi really give up everything for these two things? While Xian Yuan Wudi was reflecting, in Haoyan City, Xing Zhantian, Xian Yuan Ling, Xian Yuan Songtao, and Xiao Chun were also happily chatting. Except for the internal affairs of the Xian Yuan clan, Xian Yuan Ling briefly told Xing Zhantian to rest. Of course, Xian Yuan Ling did not say a word about what Xian Yuan Wudi had done, nor did he say that Xian Yuan Ling had killed him back then. Xian Yuan Ling still couldn't let go of his brotherly love with Xian Yuan Wudi. Although Xiao Chun didn't understand, he naturally wouldn't point out at this time. As mentioned before, since they were brothers, no matter what decision Xian Yuan Ling made, Xiao Chun would choose to support him. Even though in Xiao Chun's opinion, Xian Yuan Ling's choice was too kind and soft-hearted, Xiao Chun still did not say much. Rebirth was a very mysterious thing. However, after hearing Xian Yuan Ling's explanation, Xing Zhantian quickly accepted it and looked at Xian Yuan Ling with a smile. Brother Xian Yuan, as the saying goes, those who survive a great disaster are bound to have good fortune in the future. It seems that this is true. As he spoke, Xing Zhantian took the initiative to look at Xiao Chun. He was obviously hinting at Xiao Chun and Long Qing. Xian Yuan Ling was indeed reborn, but it was also because of this that he was able to meet Xiao Chun and Long Qing. No matter who it was, in Xing Zhantian's opinion, they would definitely have great achievements in the future, especially Xiao Chun. Needless to say, Long Qing was now the little princess of the Dragon Clan. Even the human clan knew that the Dragon Emperor doted on his little daughter a little too much. It could be said that as long as Long Qing said a word, the Dragon Emperor would probably agree to anything. Xian Yuan Ling and Long Qing were siblings. If Xian Yuan Ling needed help in the future, given the relationship between the two, Long Qing would obviously not stand by and do nothing. In other words, Xian Yuan Ling was completely supported by the Dragon Clan. In addition to Long Qing, Xiao Chun was even more so. He was now ranked 4th on the Saint rankings. With such strength and talent, it was certain that he would break through to the great saint realm in the future. Moreover, for now, Xiaoqin's prestige among the younger generation of the human clan was absolutely unmatched. It had far surpassed Xianyuan Baijian's prestige back then. Countless of the younger generation of the human clan idolized Xiaoqun. Moreover, Yin Yangzi was cultivating Xiaoqun as his successor. The Dragon Clan, the Taiyang sect, it could be said that Xianyuan Ling's two brothers were not simple people. This was what Xingzhan Tian meant by a blessing in disguise. Hearing Xingzhan Tian's words, Xianyuan Ling smiled. Then, he exchanged glances with Xiaoqun. Perhaps it was because today's matter was too shocking, or perhaps it was because so many years had passed and they suddenly saw old friends again, so everyone chatted for a long time. In the end, Sua Xin gathered together and drank. They chatted from day to night. Xianyuan Songtao did not speak much. Basically, it was Xianyuan Ling and Xingzhan Tian who were talking. When night fell, Xingzhan Tian got up and left. Xianyuan Ling personally sent him off and returned to his room. The drunkenness on his face had completely dissipated. He looked at Xianyuan Songtao and said, "Uncle, if Woody comes, let me talk to him alone." After sending Xingzhan Tian off, Xianyuan Ling suddenly mentioned Xianyuan Woody. In fact, Xianyuan Ling had already guessed that Xianyuan Woody would definitely come tonight. Hearing this, Xianyuan Songtao nodded slightly. Seeing this, Xianyuan Ling looked at Xiaoqun. In response, Xiaoqun nodded helplessly. "I'm going to cultivate." Since Xianyuan Ling had his own thoughts, Xiaoqun did not say anything more. Forget it, let him be. However, if Xianyuan Woody dared to hurt Xianyuan Ling again, Xiaoqun swore that he would definitely make him pay the price. He got up and left Xianyuan Ling's room. Then, Xianyuan Songtao went to a room next door to rest, leaving Xianyuan Ling alone to wait. The door was not closed, and Xianyuan Ling did not rest. The night gradually deepened, and the entire Haoyan city was completely quiet at this time. It was in such a deep and quiet night that suddenly, a black-clothed figure silently appeared at the door of Xianyuan Ling's room. This person was none other than Xianyuan Woody. As expected, Xianyuan Woody came. Looking at Xianyuan Ling, who had been waiting for him, Xianyuan Woody said in a low voice. Then, he stepped into the room. Seeing Xianyuan Woody coming, Xianyuan Ling said calmly, "Woody, you still came. Uncle has woken up. He's just next door." He took the initiative to tell Xianyuan Songtao. Hearing this, a strange look flashed in Xianyuan Woody's eyes. He paused for a moment before coming back to his senses. Then, he came to the chair next to Xianyuan Ling and sat down. At the same time, he waved his hand gently, and the door closed. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1505. Xianyuan Woody came late at night. No one knew what happened between him and Xianyuan Ling. However, after Xianyuan Woody talked with Xianyuan Ling, he went to see Xianyuan Songtao. The next morning, Xianyuan Woody left without doing anything to Xianyuan Ling or Xianyuan Songtao. Apart from Xianyuan Ling, Xianyuan Songtao, and Xianyuan Woody, no one else knew about what happened last night. The next morning, Xiaoqun came to Xianyuan Ling's residence early. Seeing that Xianyuan Ling was fine, Xiaoqun was relieved. At the same time, Xiaoqun did not ask about what happened last night. Xiaoqun was not a nosy person. Therefore, since Xianyuan Ling was fine, Xiaoqun was not interested in what he and Xianyuan Woody talked about last night. However, after Xiaoqun was relieved, only 2 hours later, a shocking news quickly spread among the upper echelons of the human clan. It was that Xianyuan Woody had betrayed the clan. The news came from within the Xianyuan clan. It was said that an elder of the Xianyuan clan saw Xianyuan Woody take away the Xianyuan clan's inherited treasure and flee to the territory of the Ghost clan. As the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan and one of the three, the great sage of the human clan, Xianyuan Woody had betrayed the clan. This was a fatal blow to the human clan. At first, many people did not believe that Xianyuan Woody would betray the clan and flee to the ghost clan. However, in the end, after many investigations, and the three elders of the Xianyuan clan personally returned to the Xianyuan clan, the final result was that Xianyuan Wudi really took away the Xianyuan wheel, the inherited treasure of the Xianyuan clan. It was said that the Xianyuan wheel was a treasure that had been passed down since ancient times. It had already surpassed the Saint Realm. It was a treasure that could both attack and defend. Xianyuan Wudi had suddenly taken away the Xianyuan wheel and entered the territory of the Ghost Clan. There was news from a border that Xianyuan Wudi had entered the territory of the Ghost Clan alone. All these proved that Xianyuan Wudi had betrayed his clan. However, this matter came too suddenly. For a moment, many human race warriors found it hard to accept, especially the people of Xianyuan clan. They couldn't face this fact. After all, Xianyuan Wudi was the family lord of Xianyuan clan. The betrayal of the family lord was the heaviest blow for Xianyuan clan. In Xiao Chen's courtyard, Xingzhan Tian came in person again and told Xiao, Ling, and Xianyuan Songtao the truth about Xianyuan Wudi. Ling, hearing this, Xiao Chun was stunned. Then, he looked at Xianyuan Ling. Xianyuan Wudi must have come last night. After meeting Xianyuan Ling for a meter, he betrayed the clan. What did this have to do with Xianyuan Ling? However, facing Xiao Chen's gaze, Xianyuan Ling was very calm. At the same time, Xianyuan Ling seemed to have expected Xianyuan Wudi's betrayal. He was not surprised at all. Xianyuan Songtao was the same. Seeing Xianyuan Ling's calm face, Xingzhan Tian said gloomily, Brother Xianyuan, such a big thing has happened. Why are you still so calm? The matter has already happened. What's the point of being anxious? Let's think about how to deal with it first. That's the main problem. Xianyuan Ling said in a deep voice. Since Xianyuan Wudi had betrayed the clan, it was useless to be anxious at this time. The most important thing now was to find a way to stabilize the situation and pacify the hearts of the people, especially the people of the Xianyuan clan. Hearing this, Xingzhan Tian nodded and said, Brother Xuanyuan's words are reasonable. Hearing Brother Xuanyuan's words, could it be that you already have a way? Xianyuan Ling was very calm. Obviously, he had a card up his sleeve. Facing Xingzhan Tian's question, Xianyuan Ling did not keep him in suspense. I do have a way, but I still need Brother Xing's cooperation. Immediately, Xianyuan Ling voiced his thoughts. Xianyuan Wudi's betrayal of the clan had made everyone anxious, especially the people of the Xianyuan clan. Therefore, the first thing to solve now was to stabilize the hearts of the people and pacify them. The easiest way to stabilize the hearts of the people was to announce that Xianyuan Songtao and himself were still alive. At that time, Mr. Xianyuan Songtao would be equivalent to giving the Xianyuan clan, who had lost their backbone, another stabilizing force. At that time, Xianyuan Songtao would be able to temporarily become the patriarch of a Xianyuan clan. With Xianyuan Songtao's reputation in the Xianyuan clan, this was not a problem at all. At the same time, because Xianyuan Songtao was also the great sage, this could somewhat offset the influence of Xianyuan Wudi's betrayal of the clan. This would allow the people of the other major forces to be more stable. To announce that Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling were still alive, this would require the help of the Haoyan Alliance and Xingzhan Tian support. Hearing Xianyuan Ling's words, Xingzhan Tian pondered for a moment, then quickly nodded and said, All right, it's decided. This is the best way. However, when does Brother Xianyuan plan to start? Let's wait for a few more days. Uncle's body is still weak, and he needs to rest for 2 days. If we announce it now, with Uncle's current condition, it won't be good for him, said Xianyuan Ling. Xianyuan Songtao's body was still very weak. Since he wanted to stabilize the hearts of the people, Xianyuan Songtao naturally could not appear in such a state. Otherwise, wouldn't he be looked down upon by the people? At that time, not only would it be useless, but it would also be self-defeating. Therefore, he needed to wait for a few more days before announcing the matter of Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling. Hearing this, Xingzhan Tian nodded and said, All right, Brother Xianyuan, If you need anything in the next few days, you don't have to be courteous with me. Feel free to look for me for healing pills. Xingzhan Tian naturally hoped that Xianyuan Songtao could recover as soon as possible because it would be beneficial for the entire human clan. After the matter was settled, Xingzhan Tian did not stay for long and quickly left. This was because Yangzi had gone to the Night Clan, and the great sage of the entire human clan was only Xingzhan Tian. However, Xianyuan Wudi's betrayal of the clan had caused Xingzhan Tian a headache. The matter was settled for the time being. As for Xiao Chun, Xianyuan Ling did not ask him to do anything. In this regard, Xiao Chen knew what Xianyuan Ling meant. Originally, with Xiao Chen's current status, he could have mobilized the power of the yin and yang sects to help Xianyuan Ling. However, many people in the human clan knew about the relationship between the two. There was no benefit for Xiao Chun to help Xianyuan Ling at this time. Others would think that Xianyuan Ling was deliberately pretending to be someone else. Moreover, with Xingzhan Tian alone, this matter was actually enough. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 1506. In this matter, Xiao Chun didn't need to show his face. He needed to give Xianyuan Songtao a few days to recover. During this time, the human clan would be in a state of panic, especially the clansmen of the Xianyuan clan. Sure enough, after only one day, all kinds of rumors were spreading. Some said that Xianyuan Wudi had been bribed by the Ghost Clan. Others said that Xianyuan Wudi had been in contact with the great saints of the Ghost Clan. What was even more exaggerated was that Xianyuan Wudi wasn't a human clan at all, but a spy of the Ghost Clan and the human clan. Anyway, because of Xianyuan Wudi's betrayal, all kinds of rumors were spreading. At the same time, the status of the Xianyuan clan in the human clan plummeted. Many human warriors cursed the Xianyuan clan as the shame of the human clan behind their backs. Fortunately, Xingzhan Tian's Haoyan alliance was still maintaining the situation. Otherwise, the situation would be even worse. Xiao Chun, Xianyuan Ling, and Xianyuan Songtao didn't pay any attention to the turmoil and rumors in the outside world. Xingzhan Tian had sent a lot of healing elixirs, and their grades were not low. They were all at the same grade. With the help of these healing elixirs, Xianyuan Songtao was confident that he could recover 70% of his strength in 3 days. With 70% of his strength, it was enough to deal with many things. While the human clan was in an uproar because of Xianyuan Wudi's betrayal, Xianyuan Wudi and Gue Mu were sitting together in the Ghost King Palace. In Gue Mu's cave, Xianyuan Wudi and Gue Mu sat opposite each other. Gue Mu looked at Xianyuan Wudi with a faint smile and said, "Xianyuan Wudi, I really didn't expect that you would betray your clan. What benefits do you have for coming to my Ghost Clan instead of being the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan? Or are you saying that this is just a trick set up by your human race?" Xianyuan Wudi came to the Ghost King Palace late last night. Gue Mu didn't refuse Xianyuan Wudi's surrender, but he didn't believe it either. He didn't reject Xianyuan Wudi because he wanted to see what Xianyuan Wudi wanted to do. Of course, if Xianyuan Wudi had ulterior motives for coming to the Ghost Clan, then Gue Fun wouldn't recommend killing him directly. One shouldn't think that Xianyuan Wudi couldn't be killed just because he was the great sage. Keep in mind that the Ghost Monarch Palace had 5 Ghost Grand Saints at the same time. Even Xianyuan Wudi wouldn't be able to escape unscathed. Of course, if Xianyuan Wudi truly wanted to join the Ghost race, then it would be good news for the Ghost Grave. With Xianyuan Wudi, it meant that the Ghost race had the great sage. Thus, it would be much easier to destroy the human race. However, it was not easy to make the Ghost Grave believe Xianyuan Wudi. If there was no evidence, the Ghost Grave would not easily believe Xianyuan Wudi, even if Xianyuan Wudi was eloquent. He looked at Xianyuan Wudi with a smile. Xianyuan Wudi replied expressionlessly, "Because I can't stay in the human clan anymore, so I can only betray the human race." When Xianyuan Wudi said this, there was no special emotion on his face. Seeing this, the Ghost Grave asked with a smile, "Oh, tell me about how the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan, one of the 3, the great sage of the human clan, can't stay in the human clan anymore. Xianyuan Songtao didn't die. He was killed by me. And Xianyuan Ling, he reincarnated. Xianyuan Wudi knew that the ghost grave wouldn't believe him, but he still told the truth about Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling. He didn't lie because those meaningless lies were useless to make the ghost grave believe him. Therefore, it could be said that Xianyuan Wudi told the ghost grave everything about Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling, including how he attacked them. Xianyuan Wudi didn't hold back at all. After hearing Xianyuan Wudi's words, the ghost grave's eyes turned solemn. His intuition told him that Xianyuan Wudi wasn't lying. Besides, according to Xianyuan Wudi, if these things were true, then he couldn't stay in the human clan anymore, even if he was the great sage and the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan. However, due to the importance of this matter, the ghost grave naturally didn't dare to believe Xianyuan Wudi's words so easily. He looked at Xianyuan Wudi and said indifferently, "The story is interesting, but Xianyuan Wudi, you can't be thinking that I'll believe you with just your one-sided story, right? Where's the evidence? How can you prove what you've said?" Gui Mu wanted evidence. Otherwise, he would not believe Xianyuan Wudi. Hearing this, Xianyuan Wudi said indifferently, "In less than 3 days, the human race will definitely announce that Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling are still alive. Then, you will know whether I am telling the truth." The human clan would take the initiative to announce that Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling were still alive, and the two of them would show up. By then, the ghost grave would naturally know if Xianyuan Wudi was telling the truth. The corners of the ghost grave's mouth perked up slightly, and a strange glint flashed in his eyes. After a few moments of silence, he said, "In that case, Brother Wudi, you can stay in my Ghost King Palace for now. But don't wander off. If not, it won't be good for anyone if anything happens." After talking with Xianyuan Wudi, the ghost grave actually believed that what he said was true. At the same time, he was shocked by the news that Xianyuan Songtao was still alive. However, as the ghost grave said before, he wouldn't believe it without evidence. Therefore, since Xianyuan Wudi said that the human clan would announce the matter of Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling in less than 3 days, he would wait and see. If the human clan really did announce it, and Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling really showed up, then Xianyuan Wudi's words would be credible. Hearing the ghost grave's words, Xianyuan Wudi didn't say much. However, in the end, Xianyuan Wudi said coldly, "Ghost grave, I'm here to cooperate with you. Whether you believe it or not, I have a request. If we attack the human clan in the future, I want to personally kill Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling." When he said this, the killing intent on Xianyuan Wudi's body was extremely dense. Seeing this, the ghost grave's suspicion lessened. Since Xianyuan Wudi had such a strong killing intent towards Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling, it was even more impossible for him to lie. Therefore, the ghost grave smiled and nodded. "All right, if what you said is true, when we attack the human clan, I'll leave Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling to you personally." Seeing the ghost grave nod, Xianyuan Wudi turned and left. After Xianyuan Wudi left, the ghost grave immediately found Gui Shuang and the other 4 great saints of the ghost clan. They naturally had to discuss such an important matter. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1507. In the main hall, Gui Fun, Gui Shuang, Gui Crane, and the other great sages of Ghost Clan gathered together. Gui Fun told the other 4 about Xianyuan Wudi in detail. Gui Shuang and the other 3 knew about Xianyuan Wudi's arrival. After hearing Gui Fun's words, the 4 of them pondered for a long time. Gui Shuang was the first to speak. If what Xianyuan Wudi said is true, then no matter whether Xianyuan Songtao is still alive or not, if our ghost clan has Xianyuan Wudi's help, we will have a greater advantage over the human clan. We will definitely be able to avenge our humiliation. At that time, even if the dragon clan comes to our aid, we won't have to worry about it. Xianyuan Wudi, was the great sage of the human clan. With his help, it would be good for the ghost clan. However, could they trust him? Hearing Gui Shuang's words, the underworld sect master said, "If Xianyuan Wudi really wants to rely on our ghost clan, that's great. However, if this is a trick of the human clan, what should we do? Trust? Could the ghost clan trust Xianyuan Wudi? I don't think we need to make a judgment so quickly. After all, we have just fought with the human clan. It's not the right time to continue attacking. Moreover, the friction between the Beast clan and the Divine clan has been increasing in recent days. It won't be long before the two clans go to war. When the Divine clan and the Beast clan start the war, we can attack the human clan. Even if the Dragon clan wants to help, they won't be able to do anything," Gui Crane said. Hearing Gui Crane's words, the others nodded. They had indeed heard about the conflict between the Divine clan and the Beast clan. The war between the two clans was almost inevitable. After the war between the Divine clan and the Beast clan, the Ghost clan would have a much better chance of attacking the human clan. There was no hurry. Anyway, the human clan was now like fish on the chopping board. They couldn't run away. In this way, the matter of Xianyuan Wudi didn't need to be decided in a hurry. After some discussion, Gui, Fun, and the other four finally decided to observe Xianyuan Wudi for a period of time to see if he really wanted to rely on the Ghost clan. In addition, they also wanted to see if the human clan would announce the matter of Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling as Xianyuan Wudi had said. More importantly, Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling weren't dead. Xianyuan Wudi would stay in the Ghost clan for a period of time. Ghost clan would feel at ease to accept him after they confirmed that he didn't have any Yulins. The Ghost clan had made a decision about Xianyuan Wudi. On the other side, the human clan was still in an uproar. At the same time, Yin Yangzi, who was in the Night clan, hurriedly ended the affairs of the Night clan and rushed back to Haoyan City as soon as possible after hearing that Xianyuan Wudi had defected. Yin Yangzi didn't encounter any trouble on this trip to Night clan. With the strength of Night clan, they naturally didn't dare to go against the human clan. This was the principle of the big fish eating the small fish and the small fish eating the shrimp. Therefore, when Yangzi arrived at Night clan took the initiative to offer him 2 heavenly lost stones. Only 2 heavenly lost stones. It wasn't a lot, but it was better than nothing. Yangzi hurried back to Haoyan City with the heavenly lost stones. When he saw Xing Zhantian, the first thing he asked was, "What's going on? Why did Xianyuan Wudi betray the human clan?" The betrayal of a Supreme Saint Emperor was definitely not a small matter, especially during the 100 Race War. Furthermore, the target of Xianyuan Wudi's betrayal was the Ghost Race, which made things worse. Yangzi was anxious. Along the way, Yangzi had a rough understanding of the current situation of the human clan. The situation was not optimistic. Many humans were scared. If it weren't for Haoyan Alliance and Xing Zhantian, there would have been a riot. Xing Zhantian smiled helplessly at Yangzi's anxious face. "Don't worry. I'll take you to see someone and you'll know." "See who?" Yangzi was puzzled. However, Xing Zhantian didn't answer him. Instead, he took Yangzi to Xiao Chen's residence. Yangzi was even more puzzled when Xing Zhantian took him to Xiao Chen's courtyard. However, Yangzi was soon stunned when he saw Xianyuan Songtao in the backyard. Although Xing Zhantian was also the great sage, in terms of seniority, he was 1 generation lower than Yangzi and Xianyuan Songtao. He and Xianyuan Ling were of the same generation, while Yangzi and Xianyuan Songtao were of the same generation. When Xianyuan Songtao was still the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan, Yangzi was already the ancestor of the Taiyang sect. Therefore, compared to Xing Zhantian, Yangzi clearly understood Xianyuan Songtao more. Yangzi was stunned when he saw Xianyuan Songtao sitting in front of him. Then, he said in disbelief, "Xianyuan Songtao?" Yangzi was astonished, but Xianyuan Songtao said with a smile, "Old man, you didn't expect us to meet each other one day, did you?" Xianyuan Songtao was filled with emotions when he saw Yangzi again. Yangzi was stunned for a few moments before returning to his senses. He strode toward Xianyuan Songtao and size him up from head to toe. After a few moments, Enyangzi said, "Old man, you're actually not dead? Old man?" Upon hearing Enyangzi's words, Xiao Chen was taken aback. This, in fact, Xianyuan Songtao and Enyangzi had a good relationship. They knew each other when they were young, so they addressed each other casually. Xianyuan Songtao called Enyangzi old man, while Enyangzi directly called Xianyuan Songtao old man. Upon hearing Enyangzi's words, Xianyuan Songtao said with a smile, "You're not dead yet, so how can I bear to leave you?" After the initial shock, Enyangzi returned to his senses. Then, Xianyuan Songtao told Enyangzi about his experiences over the years. Of course, he didn't involve Xianyuan Wudi. According to Xianyuan Songtao, the reason why he was forced to sleep in the ice coffin was because he was ambushed by the great sage of the ghost race. In order to save his life, he had no choice but to do so. Fortunately, Xianyuan Ling rescued him today. He didn't involve Xianyuan Wudi in the matter. After hearing Xianyuan Songtao's words, Enyangzi nodded and said, "I see. But old man, do you really intend to announce to the public that you're still alive? You should know that if the world knows that you're fine, I'm afraid it will cause a huge commotion. That's nothing. Besides, now that Wudi has betrayed the human race, if I don't step forward, I'm afraid the human race will be in danger," Xianyuan Songtao said with a smile. Upon hearing this, Enyangzi nodded. Indeed, Xianyuan Wudi had betrayed the human race. If Xianyuan Songtao didn't step forward now, the human race would indeed be in a terrible situation. After agreeing with Xianyuan Songtao's thoughts, Enyangzi turned his gaze to Xianyuan Ling. Enyangzi wasn't unfamiliar with Xianyuan Ling, but he never expected him to be Xianyuan Ling, the former #1 genius of the Xianyuan family. Seeking collection, monthly votes, recommendation. Chapter 1508. After talking about Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling, Enyangzi felt more confident. Moreover, since Enyangzi had rushed back in advance, it would be more convincing when he announced the matter of Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling to the public. He immediately decided to announce the matter of Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling 3 days later. Time passed day by day. Ever since Xianyuan Wudi betrayed the human clan, the situation in the human clan had become very tense. Fortunately, it had not developed into an uncontrollable situation. This was enough. As long as the matter of Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling was announced, the situation would definitely improve. After all, Xianyuan Songtao was also the great sage. With him around, it was indeed enough to calm the hearts of many human clan warriors, especially the warriors of the Xianyuan clan. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. During this period, nothing major happened in the human clan. Although rumors and slanders could be said to be flying everywhere, it was not important. Early in the morning, Enyangzi and Xing Zhantian gathered all the leaders of the human clan forces in the main hall. No one knew what Enyangzi and Xing Zhantian were going to do, but the leaders of the various forces still arrived on time. However, it was obvious that everyone's expressions were not very good at this time. They all looked a little dignified. This was normal. After such a big thing happened, it would be strange if everyone was in a good mood. One after another, they came to the main hall. The leaders asked each other if something had happened. Otherwise, why would Enyangzi and Xing Zhantian gather them all? However, in the face of other people's questions, everyone shook their heads and said that they did not know. Enyangzi and Xing Zhantian also did not reveal any information. After all the sect leaders had arrived, Enyangzi and Xing Zhantian's figures also appeared. It was still the same high platform with the same 3 chairs. However, after Enyangzi and Xing Zhantian took their seats, the seat that originally belonged to Xianyuan Wudi was empty. Looking at the empty seat, everyone felt even more upset. The great sage of the human race was already very few, only 3. Now that Xianyuan Wudi had betrayed the human race, there were only 2 the great sage of the human race left. How could everyone not feel gloomy? After taking in everyone's expressions, Xingzhan Tian was the first to speak. I'm sure everyone knows about Xianyuan Wudi, right? Xingzhan Tian didn't have any intention of avoiding the topic. He directly talked about the matter of Xianyuan Wudi. However, no one answered him. They didn't know how to answer him. Everyone naturally knew about this matter, but what could they do about it? Seeing that everyone was silent, Xingzhan Tian didn't mind. He paused for a moment before continuing. Xianyuan Wudi's betrayal is indeed a big blow to the human race. However, it's not the character of the human race to lose the will to fight just because of this. Today, I've gathered everyone here to tell you one thing. Although Xianyuan Wudi has betrayed the human race, the former head of the Xianyuan clan, Xianyuan Songtao, is still alive. Without beating around the bush, Xingzhan Tian directly told everyone about Xianyuan Songtao. Hearing this, everyone present was stunned. Xianyuan Songtao. Many people might not have heard of this name, but the experts of the older generation were familiar with it. Everyone's eyes suddenly looked at Xingzhan Tian on the high platform. Their faces were full of surprise, and their hearts were filled with shock. How is this possible? How can a person who has been dead for so many years still be alive? However, just when everyone was shocked, a terrifying aura descended from the sky. This aura instantly enveloped the entire hall. At the same time, this aura continued to spread in all directions. In just a few breaths, the appearance of this powerful aura could be felt everywhere in Haotian City. Great Sage level. This was definitely the aura of the Great Sage level. Sensing the appearance of this aura, the experts of the human race rose into the air from all over Haotian City and quickly rushed in the direction of the main hall. The sudden arrival of the Great Sage naturally attracted everyone's attention. However, at the same time, with the appearance of this aura, Xianyuan Songtao's figure slowly appeared on the high platform in the main hall. He was wearing a simple gray robe. His snow-like white hair fluttered in the wind. His skin was as smooth as a baby's, and his complexion was ruddy. After a few days of recuperation, Xianyuan Songtao's condition had indeed improved a lot. At this moment, he truly had the majesty of the Great Sage. Everyone present was completely stunned by Xianyuan Songtao's appearance. Some of the older generation had seen Xianyuan Songtao before. At this time, they couldn't help but exclaim, "Xianyuan Songtao, how is this possible?" Xianyuan Songtao was fine. This was absolutely shocking for everyone. While everyone was still in shock, Xianyuan Songtao spoke faintly. "Everyone, my Xianyuan clan will not collapse because of Xianyuan Wudi's betrayal. The human race will not collapse because of Xianyuan Wudi." Xianyuan Songtao's appearance surprised everyone present, but at the same time, because of Xianyuan Songtao's appearance, it was like taking a reassuring pill to everyone. They finally had some confidence in their hearts. Outside the main hall, many experts of the human race continued to rush over. At the same time, after a while, Yinyangzi, Xingzhan Tian, and Xianyuan Songtao led a group of leaders of major forces out of the main hall slowly. Previously, they suddenly felt an unfamiliar aura of the Great Sage. Now, with the appearance of Xianyuan Songtao, many experts of the human race naturally locked their eyes on Xianyuan Songtao. The people of the other forces were better. After all, so many years had passed. Most people no longer knew Xianyuan Songtao. Even if they had heard of this name, they had never seen him in person, so they couldn't recognize Xianyuan Songtao's identity for a while. However, the expressions of the experts of the Xianyuan clan in the crowd changed drastically when they saw Xianyuan Songtao. Most of these experts of the Xianyuan clan had never seen Xianyuan Songtao before, but there was a portrait of Xianyuan Songtao hanging in the ancestral hall of the Xianyuan clan. Therefore, the experts of the Xianyuan clan recognized Xianyuan Songtao's identity almost at a glance. Among them, the three elders of the Xianyuan clan took a step forward at this time and came in front of Xianyuan Songtao. They said with a look of disbelief, "Patriarch, the three elders of the Xianyuan clan were of the same generation as Xianyuan Ling and Xianyuan Wudi. They were half-step great sages, so they could be said to be the most familiar with Xianyuan Songtao. Of course, they were also the most excited at this time. Please collect, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 1509. The eyes of the three elders of the Xianyuan clan reddened instantly when they saw Xianyuan Songtao standing in front of them. They could even vaguely see tears welling up in their eyes. Xianyuan Songtao was the previous patriarch of the Xianyuan clan. They didn't expect him to still be alive. Facing the three elders who stood rooted to the ground, Xianyuan Songtao chuckled and said, "It's been so many years since we last met." Not bad. The little guy from back then has grown up and become the pillar of the Xianyuan clan. Patriarch. The three elders choked with sobs when they heard this. Xianyuan Songtao's appearance shocked everyone in the Xianyuan clan. But apart from shock, there was also a strong sense of joy. The Xianyuan clan was already at the cusp of the storm when Xianyuan Wudi betrayed the clan. Moreover, without the great sage holding the fort, the Xianyuan clan was almost destined to fall out of the ranks of the three masters of the human race. At best, they would only be a powerful quasi-saint clan. Without a great sovereign, they couldn't be called a great sage clan. This was a very simple principle. It was hard to imagine how big of a blow it would be if the Xianyuan clan, which had stood tall among the human race for so many years, fell out of the ranks of the three masters of the human race. In addition, the rumors and slanders in the outside world these days made the hearts of every member of the Xianyuan clan heavy. They didn't know what path the Xianyuan clan should take in the future. But just when everyone thought that the Xianyuan clan was at the end of their road, Xianyuan Songtao suddenly appeared. Xianyuan Songtao didn't die, which meant that the Xianyuan clan still had the great sage holding the fort. In this way, the Xianyuan clan was still one of the three masters of the human race. The experts of the Xianyuan clan couldn't be blamed for having reddened eyes. They had been under too much pressure these days. Xianyuan Wudi betrayed the clan without warning. Without warning, the Xianyuan clan stood on the edge of a cliff and almost fell off the altar. Looking at the expressions of the experts of the Xianyuan clan, Xianyuan Songtao smiled and said, "All right, what are you crying for? This old man isn't dead yet." The experts of the Xianyuan clan forcefully held back their tears when they heard Xianyuan Songtao. It didn't take long for news of Xianyuan Songtao's appearance to spread throughout the human race, and the commotion it caused was obvious. In the beginning, no one dared to believe it, but later on, the news that Xianyuan Songtao was still alive was finally confirmed. Moreover, the Xianyuan clan announced that Xianyuan Songtao had become the patriarch of the Xianyuan clan once more. The matter could be said to be filled with twists and turns. First was Xianyuan Wudi's betrayal of the clan, and then Xianyuan Songtao's appearance, causing the entire Xianyuan clan to feel as if it was on a roller coaster of excitement in a short period of a few days. However, to everyone's surprise, on the second day after Xianyuan Songtao's death was announced, the Xianyuan clan announced to the public that the former number one genius of the Xianyuan clan, Xianyuan Ling, hadn't died as well. He'd reincarnated instead, and his identity was Shao Chen's sworn brother. Chun Ling, Xianyuan Ling, didn't die. Oh no, it should be said that he'd died, but he'd reincarnated. Everyone was taken aback when this news spread. Reincarnation was too bizarre for anyone, but since the Xianyuan clan had announced Xianyuan Ling's return, then his identity had clearly been confirmed. The outside world was shaken by the news of Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling. However, at this moment, the three elders of the Xianyuan clan were all present at Xianyuan Ling's residence. They sighed emotionally as they looked at Xianyuan Ling. "Brother Ling, you really didn't die." "Haha, I knew it. How could Brother Ling have died?" The three elders had a good relationship with Xianyuan Ling because they were of the same generation. Moreover, Xianyuan Ling had been the number one genius of the Xianyuan clan back then. He'd been ranked as the leader of the three elders of the Xianyuan clan at a young age. His prestige in the Xianyuan clan was very high. Although Xianyuan Ling had been reincarnated after so many years, and his cultivation had fallen from half-step great sage to the current sage realm great mastery, the three elders still worshipped and respected Xin Yuanling. In their opinion, since Xin Yuanling was fine, he'd return to the peak sooner or later. It wouldn't be a problem even if he went one step further and became the great sage. It was a reunion of old friends. Looking at the three elders of the Xin Yuan clan in front of him, Xin Yuanling said with a smile, "The three of you haven't changed at all. This is my third brother. You all should know, right?" Xin Yuanling said with a smile. Then he pointed at Xiao Chan beside him and said to the three elders. Hearing this, the three elders nodded one after another. Who doesn't know Holy Son Xiao Chan? Since he's Brotherling's third brother, he'll be our brother in the future. Ha ha! Hearing this, one of them laughed loudly. Hearing this, Xiao Chan smiled helplessly. What was this? In terms of age, the three elders of the Xin Yuan clan were older than Xiao Sheng. They were old enough to be his old ancestor. However, because of Xin Yuanling, the three elders had now become his brothers. In an instant, Xiao Chen's seniority had increased by many times. If this was the case, then the younger generation of the Xin Yuan clan, like Xin Yuan Baijian, would have to respectfully call Xiao Chun old ancestor when they see him in the future. After all, Xiao Chun and the three elders of the Xin Yuan clan called each other brothers. Because of the matter of Xin Yuan Songtao and Xin Yuan Ling, the three elders' mood could no longer be described as excited. In short, they were happy. However, just as the Xin Yuan clan had turned misfortune into a blessing and everyone was immersed in excitement, the Dragon Emperor of the Dragon Clan naturally received the news of Xin Yuan Songtao and Xin Yuan Ling. The Dragon Emperor didn't feel much about Xin Yuan Songtao. However, the Dragon Emperor seemed to have mixed feelings about Xin Yuan Ling. After all, it was because Xin Yuan Ling had barged into the Dragon Clan and stolen Long Qing, who hadn't been born yet. As a result, Long Qing had been separated from the clan since she was young. As her father, he was also separated from Long Qing. From this point of view, Xin Yuan Ling was indeed the enemy of the Dragon Clan and the Dragon Emperor. According to the Dragon Emperor's temper in the past, if he knew that Xin Yuan Ling was still alive, he would probably rush to the human clan and kill him again. However, what made the Dragon Emperor feel most helpless was that Xin Yuan Ling was actually Long Qing's elder brother. This was difficult to deal with. The original enemy had actually become Long Qing's elder brother. One had to know that it was because of Xin Yuan Ling that Long Qing had been separated from the clan since she was young. Sitting in the garden, the Dragon Emperor gazed at Long Qing with an indescribable expression in his eyes. In the end, he couldn't help but let out a sigh. My dear daughter, do you know that Xin Yuan Ling was the one who took you away back then? If it weren't for him, you wouldn't have been homeless and miserable and suffered so much. I know, but you can't hurt him. If you dare to hurt Big Brother, I won't talk to you anymore. Upon hearing the Dragon Emperor's words, Long Qing said stubbornly. After this period of interaction, Long Qing had completely integrated into the Dragon Clan and accepted the Dragon Emperor as her father. Therefore, at this moment, Long Qing spoke like a daughter acting coquettishly to her father. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 1510. After receiving news about Xin Yuan Ling, the Dragon Emperor was extremely depressed. However, looking at his daughter's determined face and even a little coquettish look, the Dragon Emperor could not be tough. He had always doted on Long Qing. In the Dragon Emperor's opinion, he had let his daughter down and owed her too much. Therefore, the Dragon Emperor had no bottom line in front of Long Qing. As long as it was Long Qing's request, the Dragon Emperor would satisfy it. Therefore, after hearing Long Qing's words, the Dragon Emperor only exhorted her for a moment. Then, he shook his head and smiled bitterly. All right, I promise you. Let bygones be bygones. I won't pursue the matter any further. The Dragon Emperor chose to agree. This was expected. However, Long Qing continued, also, if my elder brother comes to the Dragon Tribe in the future, you can't make things difficult for him. You can't be rude to him. Not only must the Dragon Emperor not hurt Xin Yuan Ling, but the Dragon Emperor must not make things difficult for Xin Yuan Ling, even if he came to the Dragon Tribe in the future. Hearing this, the Dragon Emperor was stunned. How could this be? If it were not for this brat, how could he have been separated from his daughter for such a long time? He was already giving face to Long Qing by not cutting him into pieces. The Dragon Emperor was stunned for a moment. Then, his face darkened. He was about to refuse when Long Qing reached out and grabbed the Dragon Emperor's arm. She shook it and said coquettishly, "Promise me, my elder brother. Promise me, okay? Father, although Big Brother is in the wrong, you wouldn't have been able to see your daughter all these years if it wasn't for Big Brother. Shouldn't his merits offset his faults? Moreover, since he is your daughter's big brother, he can be considered half a son to you, right?" Long Qing was acting coquettishly. In the past, no one would believe her. However, after interacting with the Dragon Emperor, Long Qing had completely accepted him. Moreover, Long Qing knew that the Dragon Emperor would not reject her if she acted coquettishly. Therefore, for the sake of her elder brother, Xin Yuanling, she could only betray herself to escape the Dragon Emperor's favor. She pouted her lips, unwilling to give up. Sure enough, the Dragon Emperor's heart softened when he saw this. Sigh, I've really given birth to a little ancestor. I must have owed her in my previous life, and now she's here to collect the debt. Thinking of this, the Dragon Emperor shook his head and smiled helplessly. All right. Father promises you. I promise you, all right? Stop shaking me. You're making me dizzy. Although he said that he was unwilling, the Dragon Emperor was very happy to see his daughter acting like a spoiled child. His daughter was the best, unlike Long Yang, who was heartless and unfilial. While the Dragon Emperor was thinking, Long Yang, who was drinking in a garden not far away, suddenly sneezed. He rubbed his nose and muttered to himself, "Which girl is thinking of me again?" Narcissistic, Long Yang thought that some girl was thinking about him, but he didn't know that it was actually his father who was secretly scolding him. In the end, the Dragon Emperor chose to give in to Long Qing's sugar-coated bullets. Seeing this, Long Qing happily kissed the Dragon Emperor on his forehead and then skipped away. "I knew that father is the best. I'm going to cultivate." After saying that, she ran away like a wisp of smoke and disappeared. It had to be said that Long Qing's personality had changed a lot recently. Perhaps it was because of Dragon Emperor and Long Yang's care, but Long Qing's personality had become a lot more cheerful. But at the same time, he was also a lot more arrogant than before. Looking at Long Qing's back, the Dragon Emperor felt the warmth on his forehead. He smiled and said, "This little girl is very serious." Just then, an elder of the Dragon Clan appeared in front of the Dragon Emperor and bowed respectfully. "Clan leader, everything is ready. Where do we set off?" Originally, the Dragon Emperor had already prepared to send people to the human clan to kill Xin Yuanling, but now, what was there to do? Therefore, when he heard the elder's words, the smile on the Dragon Emperor's face instantly disappeared, as if he had become a different person. He said in a low voice, "No need. No, but..." The elder was dubious. But before he finished his sentence, the Dragon Emperor interrupted him. "I said no. Not only that, but no one is to find trouble with Xin Yuanling in the future. If not, I will kill him. Do you understand?" "Yes," the elder replied. The Dragon Emperor's change in attitude was really fast. A second ago, he wanted to kill Xin Yuanling, but in the next second, he changed his mind. Of course, the elder also knew that only Long Qing could make the Dragon Emperor change his mind. She's really a little ancestor. She's the only one in the entire Dragon Clan who is favored. Not only the clan leader, but also the other two patriarchs, the elder thought inwardly. Long Qing was like a princess in the Dragon Clan. Not only the Dragon Emperor, but the other two patriarchs were also very fond of Long Qing. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that one could offend anyone in the Dragon Clan except for Long Qing. Otherwise, one could only wait for death, and no one would be able to save one. Since the Dragon Emperor had already made his decision, the elder didn't say anything else. He bowed and left quickly. The matter of the Dragon Clan was easily resolved by Long Qing. At the same time, the situation in the human race stabilized quickly due to Xin Yuan Songtao's appearance. At least, It wasn't like before where rumors were flying all over the place. In addition, in the Ghost Clan, as Xianyuan Songtao and Xianyuan Ling were really fine, Gui Mu and the other great saints of the Ghost Clan believed Xianyuan Wudi's word for the time being. After a series of tests, Gui Mu and the others finally accepted Xianyuan Wudi for the time being. They believed him for the time being, but the Ghost Clan still didn't plan to attack the human race. After the last defeat, the Ghost Clan was more cautious. They were waiting for the Beast Clan and the Divine Clan to fight. At that time, the Dragon Clan wouldn't be able to free themselves to help the human race. However, with the passage of time, half a month had passed in the blink of an eye. The human race had completely stabilized internally, but the Beast Clan and the Divine Clan still hadn't broken out into a large-scale war. Instead, the Divine Clan and the Barbarian Clan had officially started a war. The Divine Clan and the Beast Clan hadn't started a war, but the Divine Clan and the Barbarian Clan had started a war first. In this regard, although the Ghost Clan was speechless, they couldn't do anything about it. Since the Beast Clan and the Divine Clan hadn't started a war yet, they could only continue to wait. After all, the Beast Clan and the Divine Clan hadn't started a war yet. It wasn't the best time to attack the human race at this time. As for the war between the Divine Clan and the Barbarian Clan, the Ghost Clan had no intention of intervening. It was best to let the two clans fight. The more tragic the fight, the better. When the two clans fought until both sides suffered, the other clans would be able to pick up the scraps, and the Ghost Clan would naturally be able to get a share of the loot. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 15:11. The battle between the Sky Race and the Barbarian Race broke out very suddenly, almost without any warning. The reason was because the Barbarian Race suddenly attacked the Sky Race and invaded the Sky Race's territory. Naturally, the Heavenly Palace couldn't swallow this humiliation and immediately sent out experts to counterattack. As a result, a great war broke out between the two races. Moreover, the Great Sage attacked right from the start. Without the slightest test, an all-out war broke out right from the start. The Sky Race wasn't weak, there was no doubt about that. Moreover, the Heavenly Palace did indeed have a hidden power. Originally, the Heavenly Palace only had 3 palace lords, which were 3 the Great Sage. However, this time, the Heavenly Palace actually sent out 6 the Great Sage. 6 the Great Sage was the foundation of the Heavenly Palace. The Barbarian Race wasn't weak either. The Great Sage had also reached 6. In fact, there wasn't much of a difference in strength between the Barbarian Race and the Sky Race. The Sky Race was stronger than the Barbarian Race, but they were stronger than the younger generation. In terms of the older generation experts, including the Great Sage, the Barbarian Race wasn't weaker than the Sky Race. As for the younger generation, other than Tian Mushi, who was ranked second on the Saint rankings, no one in the Barbarian Race could contend against her. The flames of war instantly broke out in the Sky Barbarian mountain range, which was the border between the Barbarian Race and the Sky Race. The experts of the two races were constantly gathering towards the Sky Barbarian mountain range. For a moment, the sky was filled with dense clouds, and an austere aura enveloped the entire Sky Barbarian mountain range. Being in the human race, Xiao Chun naturally received news of the war between the Sky Race and the Barbarian Race. Xiao Chun immediately contacted Tian Yu through the sound transmission talisman and learned that she was also participating in the war. Xiao Chun warned her repeatedly, telling her to be careful. It wasn't strange that Tian Yu wanted to participate in the war. After all, Tian Yu was also a disciple of the Heavenly Palace. As long as the war didn't break out with the human race, Tian Yu couldn't refuse to fight for the Heavenly Palace. This was reasonable, so Xiao Chun couldn't stop her. However, after talking to Tian Yu, Xiao Chun sent a letter to Tian Mushi. The content was simple. He hoped that Tian Mushi could take care of Tian Yu. After all, no matter how strong she was, there was a possibility of her dying. Xiao Chun didn't want to lose Tian Yu. After all, Shao Chun was the first holy son of the human race. After all, Shao Chun was the first holy son. Shao Chun's, if he interfered, he would S's. This was the concern brought about by his identity. If Shao Chun was just a nobody, he would not have to worry about this at all. Unfortunately, Shao Chun was the first sacred son of the human race. There were many things that he could not only consider himself, but also the entire human race. With Tian Mushi's care, it shouldn't be a big problem. Shao Chun understood that the first holy son Chongshan was only ranked 8th on the saint rankings. He couldn't even compare to Tian Fun, let alone Tian Mushi. With Tian Mushi around, there shouldn't be any problems. Very quickly, Tian Mushi replied with a single sentence. Remember, you owe me a favor. Shao Chun smiled when he received Tian Mushi's reply. He didn't think too much about it, but he still paid close attention to the situation in the Sky Barbarian mountain range, especially Tian Yu. The other races had no intention of interfering in the war between the Sky race and the Barbarian race. Presumably, everyone wanted to let the Sky race and the Barbarian race fight until both sides were injured. Then, they would take advantage of the situation. This kind of thinking was very normal during the 100 Race War. In the Sky Race's encampment in the Sky Barbarian mountain range, the two races had been in a stalemate for several days. During this period of time, many battles, big and small, had erupted. On this day, Tian Mushi and Tian Yu sat around their residence and chatted. Tian Mushi took the initiative to talk about Shao Chun. Your husband is really long-winded. He's already sent me 3 letters. Each time, he told me to pay attention to your safety. Tian Mushi looked at Tian Yu with a smile on her face. What she said was true. Shao Chun had already sent her 3 letters. Each time, he said to trouble Tian Mushi to look for Tian Yu. Tian Mushi was helpless about this. In the last letter, Tian Mushi directly replied, My great holy son Shao, why don't you come to the Sky Barbarian mountain range personally? Protect Tian Yu personally. This way, you won't have to worry about your wife's safety. Tian Mushi was also afraid of Shao Chun. Hearing this, Tian Yu's face turned slightly red, but her heart was incomparably sweet. The more Shao Chun valued her, the more Tian Yu could feel Shao Chun's love for her. Just as the two women were chatting, suddenly, the sound of war drums rang. This was the signal for the battle to break out. Seeing this, Tian Mushi helplessly got up and stretched. Again, these barbarian race are really troublesome. This kind of war drum sound had become commonplace in the past few days. However, this time was clearly different because the barbarian race had launched a large-scale attack. The 6 great saints of the barbarian race had all moved out. The powerhouses of the two races had all moved out, and a great battle broke out in the sky above the Sky Barbarian mountain range. The powerhouses above the Saint realm still directly entered the void and fought fiercely, while the holy sons of the two races, Tian Mushi and Chongshan, led the cultivators below the Saint realm and faced each other in the sky above the Sky Barbarian mountain range. The battlefield of the older generation was separated from the battlefield of the younger generation. This had always been an unwritten rule in the Central world. The great sage was too strong. If the battlefield was placed together, then if the great sage was careless and accidentally killed a holy son of the saint ranking, then the punishment will heavenly way would descend. The gains would not make up for the losses. It should be known that it was absolutely not profitable to exchange the life of the great sage with the life of a holy son of the saint ranking, especially the holy sons of the lower ranks. Of course, if they could exchange the life of a holy son like Tian Mushi, then they would have profited greatly. Unfortunately, this was not realistic. The powerhouses of the older generation had already entered the void and fought fiercely. In the outside world, Tian Mushi and the heavily injured holy sons of the two races, as well as the cultivators below the saint realm, stood facing each other. Looking at the heavily injured holy son, Tian Mushi said lazily, Chongshan, what's the point? You're no match for me. No one here can stop me. You know that. Tian Mushi was not arrogant when facing Chongshan, but confident. Indeed, Chongshan's strength was far inferior to Tian Mushi's. This was the truth. However, Chongshan did not refute Tian Mushi's words. He only smiled faintly. Who said I'm your opponent? Your opponent is this. As he spoke, a ray of light flashed from Chongshan's storage ring. Immediately, a jet-black humanoid puppet about 3 meters tall appeared beside Chongshan. Seeing this puppet, Tian Mushi's eyes flashed with a strange glint. An ancient puppet? Ancient puppets were very powerful existences in the ancient times. They were known as war machines. It was said that the powerful puppets of the ancient times were even comparable to the great sage. Unfortunately, with the passage of time, the ancient puppets were gradually lost. To this day, the ancient puppets that could still be used by the various races of the Central World were almost extinct. Who would have thought that Chongshan would have an ancient puppet? Begging for a monthly vote, begging for a recommendation. Chapter 15:12. Tian Mushi's eyes flashed with surprise when she saw Chongshan take out a humanoid puppet. It seemed that this puppet was Chongshan's trump card. It was merely a puppet. Although Tian Mushi wanted to say this, the puppet that Chongshan took out was absolutely not weak. Although it hadn't made a move yet, judging from all aspects of this puppet, its strength was at least comparable to an ordinary perfect quasi-saint realm martial artist. A puppet comparable to a perfect quasi-saint realm martial artist was indeed very strong. At least, it was enough to stall Tian Mushi. After all, no matter how strong Tian Mushi's battle prowess was, her cultivation was only at the perfect saint realm. There was an entire realm between her and the perfect quasi-saint realm. In addition, puppets were different from martial artists. They didn't feel pain or fear. Once they started fighting, they wouldn't stop until one of them died. Moreover, puppets' defensive power was stronger than martial artists. Therefore, it was publicly acknowledged that puppets were definitely stronger than martial artists in the same realm. Of course, this judgment was only limited to ordinary martial artists. Saints like Tian Mushi on the saint rankings weren't included in this. Chongshan looked at Tian Mushi and sneered. Tian Mushi, my barbarian race paid a great price to repair this puppet. I don't know if you're a match for it. It's merely a puppet. Do you think it can change anything? Tian Mushi sneered. This puppet could indeed stall Tian Mushi, but one shouldn't forget that in addition to Tian Mushi, there was also Tian Fun whose strength was above Chongshan's. Tian Fun was ranked 6th on the saint rankings and was stronger than Chongshan. Therefore, even if she was stalled by this puppet, Tian Mushi wasn't too nervous. At most, they were evenly matched. However, as soon as Tian Mushi finished speaking, Chongshan seemed to know what she was thinking and took out another puppet from his storage ring. The second puppet. However, compared to the first puppet, this second puppet was clearly much weaker. It was only equivalent to the entry level of the quasi-saint realm. There were a total of 2 puppets, one strong and one weak. He took out another puppet and looked at Tian Mushi with serious injuries. He sneered, Tian Mushi, Tian Fun, if the 2 of you are tied down, who in the celestial race can stop me? He completely returned Tian Mushi's words to her. Tian Mushi's eyes flashed with seriousness. 2 puppets. This was indeed beyond her expectations. No wonder the barbarian race dared to act so unscrupulously. It turned out that they were already prepared. In terms of the younger generation, the Tian clan would definitely have the advantage, and it would be a huge advantage. Tian Mushi and Tian Fun were both stronger than Chongshan. However, with the appearance of these 2 puppets, the situation changed. With the strength of these 2 puppets, it was completely enough to stall Tian Mushi and Tian Fun. As a result, there was no one to deal with Chongshan. Among the younger generation of the divine race, other than Tian Mushi and Tian Fun, no one else was a match for Chongshan. The 2 puppets immediately changed the situation on the battlefield. A cold smile flashed across Zhongshan's eyes as he faced Tian Mushi, whose expression had already sunk a little. He immediately activated the 2 puppets and gave the order. The two puppets immediately charged towards Tian Mushi and Tian Fun. The stronger puppet went straight for Tian Mushi, while the weaker puppet locked its target on Tian Fun. As the two puppets attacked, Chongshan also shouted in a deep voice, "Kill!" Following Chongshan's order, the barbarian race cultivators immediately charged towards the divine race. In the face of the barbarian race's attack, it was naturally impossible for the divine race to surrender. Therefore, even though Tian Mushi and Tian Fun were entangled by the two puppets, the divine race cultivators still attacked together. A great battle instantly broke out. It had to be said that the two puppets were indeed very strong. They were even stronger than Tian Mushi had expected, just like the puppet that was fighting Tian Mushi at this moment. With its terrifying defensive power and fearless fighting style, even an ordinary half-step Great Saint cultivator would find it difficult to be a match for it. There was no longer the slightest reservation, but it was very difficult to defeat this puppet. Of course, if Tian Mushi broke through to the quasi-saint realm, the situation would be completely different. Unfortunately, Tian Mushi's current cultivation was only at the perfect saint realm. It was impossible to deal with this puppet in a short period of time. As a result, Tian Mushi was naturally unable to deal with Chongshan. On the other side, Tian Fun's situation was not much different from Tian Mushi's. He was also entangled by another puppet that was weaker. It was difficult for him to free himself for a short period of time. Tian Mushi and Tian Fun were both pinned down. As a result, no one could deal with Chongshan. Chongshan's target was also very clear. It was the other holy sons of the divine race apart from Tian Mushi and Tian Fun. With the two puppets entangling the two of them, the other holy sons of the divine race were no match for Chongshan. Therefore, Chongshan's target was these holy sons of the divine race from the beginning of the battle. His first target was Tianyu. There was no other way. Tianyu was the closest to Chongshan. He knew Tianyu's identity. He was ranked 76th on the saint ranking. His strength was not considered strong, at least for Chongshan. Without the slightest hesitation, Chongshan charged towards Tianyu. At the same time, Tianyu had just finished off a barbarian race cultivator when he felt a strong murderous intent enveloping him. He turned around and saw Chongshan rushing towards him. The difference in strength between him and Chongshan was huge. Therefore, Tianyu naturally did not think he was a match for Chongshan. However, there was no other way. Tianyu could only brace himself and fight Chongshan. The mark of the divine race appeared on Tianyu's forehead. Tianyu struck out with his palm. Seeing this, Chongshan snorted coldly. Insignificant skill. As he spoke, he threw out a punch. The fist and palm collided. Without much resistance, Tianyu's palm print was shattered by Heavenly Injury's punch. After shattering Tianyu's palm imprint with a single punch, he arrived in front of Tianyu at the same time. Without stopping, he threw out another punch. Chongshan did not show any mercy in this punch. It was aimed at killing Tianyu. With the difference in strength between the two, Tianyu would definitely be seriously injured even if he did not die. Heavenly Injury's eyes were overflowing with murderous intent. Die! His fist slammed into Tianyu's chest. Tianyu spat out a mouthful of blood. At the same time, Tian Mushi's voice rang out. Chongshan, stop! Tian Mushi was caught in a deadlock by the puppet. Seeing Chongshan attack Tianyu, although she was anxious, there was nothing she could do. She could only shout out, "Please add me to your collection. Please recommend me." Chapter 15:13. Tian Mushi was severely injured by a single punch, and her injuries were definitely not light. Seeing this, Tian Mushi shouted angrily with an ugly expression. Tianyu was seriously injured, so one could imagine Tian Mushi's mood. Before the battle, Xiao Chan had repeatedly sent her a letter, asking her to protect Tianyu. But who would have thought that Tianyu would be injured by Chongshan's punch in such a short time? Tianyu spat out a mouthful of blood, then fell into a coma. Chongshan did not show any signs of holding back. He threw out another punch, obviously wanting to kill Tianyu in one fell swoop. What a joke. Now that the war between the heavenly barbarians had broken out, how could Chongshan pay attention to Tian Mushi's words? Seeing that Chongshan was about to kill Tianyu, Tian Mushi's face darkened. Then, without caring about anything else, the mark of the divine clan appeared on her forehead, and her aura suddenly skyrocketed. The divine clan's divine ability, oneness of heaven and man, oneness of heaven and man, was one of the divine clan's most powerful divine abilities. It could allow the divine clan's combat power to soar in an instant, but of course, there were side effects. As Tian Mushi used oneness of heaven and man, the mark on her forehead quickly spread, covering her entire face in an instant. Like a tattoo, her entire face was covered by the mark of the divine clan. She threw out a punch, knocking back the puppet. Then, without stopping, Tian Mushi rushed toward Tianyu. In the nick of time, Tian Mushi finally reached Tianyu's side and blocked Chongshan's punch for her. Then, she held the unconscious Tianyu in her arms and said coldly to Chongshan, "Chongshan, do you want to die? Tianyu is Xiao Chen's wife. If you dare to kill her, I can guarantee that you will definitely die." Tianyu is Xiao Chen's wife? Hearing this, Chongshan was stunned. He did not know much about Tianyu. After all, she was only in existence ranked at the bottom of the saint rankings. Naturally, Chongshan would not pay special attention to her. However, Xiao Chun was different. He was already ranked 4th on the saint ranking. Some people from the human race had even begun to compare Xiao Chun with Long Yang, Tian Mushi, and Shunjun. They said that Xiao Chen's strength was actually enough to contend with the three of them. The 3 monstrous geniuses on the saint rankings would probably become the 4 monstrous geniuses. Of course, Zhongshan didn't believe the rumors that Xiao Chun was strong enough to compete with Long Yang and the others. But no matter what, it was true that Xiao Chun had defeated Gui Yintian, and many people had witnessed the battle. It was no exaggeration to say that Gui Yintian didn't have much power to fight back against Xiao Chun. In that case, regardless of whether Xiao Chun could compete with Long Yang and the other 2, he should at least be stronger than Chongshan. If it wasn't necessary, Chongshan didn't want to provoke Xiao Chun. After a brief warning, Chongshan snorted coldly and turned to attack the other Tian clan chosens. He didn't continue to attack Tianyu because he was afraid of Xiao Chun. Unfortunately, Tianyu was already seriously injured. It was probably too late to stop now. Tian Mushi knew Xiao Chun very well. She could guess what Xiao Chun would do if he found out that Xiao Chun was seriously injured and unconscious. Tian Mushi felt a headache when she thought of Xiao Chun. After all, she hadn't protected Tianyu well this time. Tianyu no longer had the strength to fight. Tian Mushi had a Tian clan cultivator carry Tianyu back to treat her injuries while she continued to fight the puppet. Previously, she had only forced the puppet to retreat. Now, the puppet was attacking again. Tian Mushi hurriedly handed Tianyu to the Tian clan cultivator beside her and said, "Take Tianyu back." After saying that, Tian Mushi attacked and once again engaged in a fierce battle with the puppet. The battle between the Tian clan and the barbarian clan was unusually intense. In the end, neither side could determine a victor and could only stop for the time being. However, it was obvious that the barbarian race had the upper hand in this battle. Because of the existence of the 2 puppets, Tian Mushi and Tian Fun were firmly held back while Chongshan took the opportunity to kill many Tian clan cultivators. The top fighting forces of the 2 clans were evenly matched. However, in the battle between ordinary cultivators and the chosens of the saint ranking, the barbarian clan had a certain advantage because of the 2 powerful puppets. In the Tian clan's encampment, the Tian clan had suffered a lot in this battle. At this time, the Heavenly King and the other Tian clan great saints, as well as Tian Mushi and the other chosens of the saint ranking, gathered together. The barbarian clan really can't endure. They actually hid 2 puppets. Damn it. It's useless to complain now. If we don't deal with these 2 puppets, we'll be in trouble, said a Tian clan great saint beside the Heavenly King. Then what should we do? Send experts? However, with the strength of those two puppets, it's impossible to destroy them without the cultivation of a half-step great saint. No, half-step great saints can't be sent. If they wanted to destroy the two puppets of the barbarian clan, they would need at least a half-step great saint to take action. Unfortunately, there was no difference between the top fighting forces of the Tian clan and the barbarian clan. If the Tian clan sent a half-step great saint to deal with the two puppets, the Tian clan would definitely be at a disadvantage in terms of top fighting forces. At that time, it was likely to cause a chain reaction, causing the Tian clan to suffer heavy losses. They couldn't send their top fighting forces to deal with the two puppets, but if they didn't do so, what could they do? Tian Mushi and Tian Fan obviously didn't have the ability to destroy the two puppets. Although they could contend, they couldn't win. In this way, it meant that in every battle from now on, Tian Mushi and Tian Fan would be entangled by these two puppets, causing no one in Heavy Mountain to be able to stop them. At that time, more and more ordinary martial warriors would die. Just like today's battle, Chung Shan alone killed nearly 10,000 Tian clan cultivators, which made the Heavenly King and the other Tian clan great saints furious. The two puppets must be dealt with. Otherwise, the Tian clan would definitely suffer in every battle. At that time, such disadvantages would accumulate bit by bit, and the disadvantages would turn into defeats. At that time, it would be troublesome. Without any good ideas, the Heavenly King and the others could only look at Tian Mushi. The best result now was that Tian Mushi had the ability to destroy one of the puppets. In that case, the situation would improve a lot. However, in the face of the Heavenly King and the others' gazes, Tian Mushi shook her head without hesitation and smiled bitterly. "Don't look at me. I can't do anything. It's already very strenuous to be able to contend with it. After all, it's a puppet comparable to a perfect quasi-saint. I'm not a god." In the face of the Heavenly King and the others' gazes, Tian Mushi directly expressed that she couldn't do anything. Hearing this, the Heavenly King and the others' faces darkened slightly. However, just as everyone was feeling depressed, Tian Mushi paused and then said with a bitter smile, "Actually, there's no need to think of a way because someone will come to help very soon. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."